That is Akash from
The Convergence Foundation.
from which foundation?
The Convergence Foundation.
Convergence Foundation. He's ex Satwa. Come. Right, more and more people are coming in. Thank God. Come, Himandu. Yes. Sir, either. Sir, please. Amit, please come. Richard, please come. Yeah, please come. We'll mix and match.
Welcome.
Please come. Come, Richard, you can sit anywhere.
Just started the conversation.
Yeah. So I was just thanking the people who made it happen. So there is Navya, there is Sheen. Where is Sheen? There she is. And where is Ananya? There she is. Yes, thanks. There is Siddhant here. Right? He's still studying in BIT, so he's helping us out. Then there is people on the channel. There are Najina, Hosana, Avni, Nirmal, Akash, Purvi, some people who have helped us. So it's all a collective effort, and all of us are volunteers in this. So I thought I'll tell you people that this is purely community and volunteer driven exercise. And of course, thanks to people like Dr. Amit Kapoor from IFC, who's giving us the basic framework. Sheen is there, Ananya is there. These are the people who are giving us the backing that is the framework right? Is it statistically valid? Have you researched it properly? Sheen has given me a lot of night outs in the last couple of days. Sheen, thank you so much. Back to you.
Okay, so if I can go to the next chart, let me just, by the way, how many of you have heard of the Agri Collaboratory? Okay, half the room, not bad. But when we were setting up the Agri Collaboratory, there were some principles that we wanted to keep in mind. Right? The first is, and all the startups here in the room will agree, there's a huge amount of duplication that all of you put in. The first thing that every startup does is to start collecting data. Is that right? The World Bank estimates, Parmesh Sai has been saying it so many times, that 60-70% of the effort that startups put in are duplicated. So we did not want to create one more silo, one more competing node in a complex ecosystem. Second, we are absolutely convinced that ecosystem-led efforts are the most cost-efficient and the best way to move forward if you're going to make sustainable difference in any sector. Right? So therefore, keeping the focus on the small farmer, we are not a voice of the industry. We work with the industry, we work with the governments, we work with academia, but the focus for all of us who come together is the farmer. Right? Our approach is use case led. So the framework, as you will discover over the next 1 hour or so, is one use case that we're working on, right, to solve a gap in the ecosystem. So all things that we work on are use case led, and our construct, our behavior is that of an open, inclusive ecosystem builder. We represent the synthesis of what several of our partners have come together and contributed, and we are hoping that at the end of this conversation, we will double that number through many of you folks joining us and saying we want to collaborate, we want to partner with maybe the framework or maybe with something else. So that's TAC. Sanjeev, I'll over to you.
Yeah, I think.
I'm going to talk about a little bit about the conversation that we're going to have today, maybe in a couple of minutes. Parmesh is waiting.
Yeah, if you can switch to the next slide, Parmesh is going to come on. It's 1 o'clock in the morning from in Washington. So Parmesh is going to come in. He says, I have to speak today and I have to tell people what terrific efforts that you're putting in. So that's our biggest endorser right now with us. So we're going to have, very simple, a conversation starter. Okay, this entire way we put it is to have a conversation. You can walk up and ask you questions. So we send that 2-pager to you people. So there's going to be a quiz after this. We'll ask you, what did you understand things properly or not? Okay. Then
do you want people to listen in, or do you want people to start opening their phones and going through those notes?
I'll leave it to you. That's a good one. Then we'll have Ratish. Ratish is around. Yeah, there he is. As usual, the backbencher, right from college till now. So Ratish will is the first person with whom we worked, and I must actually credit him with this particular idea.
With the seed of planting the seed.
Planting the
Thank
seed.
you, Radish.
And his organization worked in developing the first version of it. So Purvi is there, Akash is there, they developed the first version. We worked thereafter on our own. Then we have Amit. Amit is a key supporter from Institute for Competitiveness. He brings in this expertise and he will tell us about it. There's Mr. Harsh Bhanwala. Sir, please come, sir. So, sir, please. Not at all, sir. We started
आप
early,
रोहतक से
sir.
आ रहे हैं. We are very, very happy you could come in.
So then, I think we will take you through a very brief, I will walk you through what the framework is all about. And then Venki from Agribusiness Matters will perhaps walk us through an envisioning exercise. How do we take it forward? And we expect you people to contribute, talk, because that is how the richness of this entire thing will be built.
And in between, Ram Thulipala from CGIR is on the Zoom call from Mali, I think, in Africa.
Nairobi.
No, he's not in Nairobi
Okay.
today. He's 5 hours behind, but he will join on the phone and he will talk about CGIR's angle.
So should we switch to Parmesh now?
No, you have one more thing. Or
Okay.
Just quickly summarize.
Yeah, Nipun
this.
has been telling me I'm forgetting my slides. क्योंकि मुझे ये सब चीज़ बोलनी है, तो मैं बोल देता हूँ, ठीक है? So, what is AgDx again? I think you people might have read it. It's nothing. It's a farmer-centric digitalization framework. Index is an outcome of that to help assess the penetration, maturity, and impact of the digitalization of agriculture. My wife has been wanting to understand this, so I spent 1 hour with her last night, and she understood everything. So I was pretty good with that. Okay, and so.
Go
So
back.
practices, products, and process. So it's a journey. Someone asked me, what is your plan? I said, we will work along 1 decade, 2 decades, whether it is Ek Step or the other organization we work with this. No, the other one which Nandan Nilekani's. FIDE. So they all say that all these journeys are about a decade, 2 decades. So we are in no hurry.
And I spirit also.
I spirit also. So you speak to them, they always tell you, take your time. This is an ecosystem building exercise. Take your time. It's going to be a long haul. So please do not ask me questions. कि कल क्या होगा, परसों क्या होगा? I don't know. Okay? We'll work along with all of you. We don't know. It's volunteer driven. If you have volunteers, we'll push it forward.
And there are 3 formal organizations partnering for the framework. Institute for Competitiveness, CGIR, and the Agri Collaboratory. So with that, can we bring on Parmesh? Can you switch off the charts? Parmesh? Sanjeev, over to you.
No, you take over with Parmesh.
Parmesh, can you hear us? Can you stop
Yeah,
sharing?
Nipun, I could hear you. Yeah, Sanjeev, hi.
Right. Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Can you
Good morning to
just,
you.
Have him stop sharing, Siddha. Stop sharing. Right. Can we now
Right.
switch to Parmesh? Pin Parmesh.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm very sorry that I can't be there today. I think it's a very important occasion. I think a lot of ideas here have been discussed in the past. And what interests me is that we are at a critical stage. I will just bring out our own perspective of the World Bank. We're investing in 65 locations globally now in the digital agriculture as part of our investment in agriculture and food. This investment is already in the data and digital has reached almost like $1.5 billion now globally. And we work across geographies. Every country is at a different stage in terms of technology and digitization. It's at a different stage in terms of agriculture growth. The needs for agriculture are different. Some countries want to become agribusiness powerhouse. Some countries want to handle the climate change. Some countries are focused on food security. So in a situation when there are many motives for investing in agriculture and in digitization, there's a need now to understand how this digitization is happening and is it creating the kind of impact which we thought the digitization would create. So I think the imperative is that we cannot keep on investing in a sector in a particular way, assumption is that if we really bring data and innovation into agriculture, all the conventional indicators like productivity, market access, access to credit, dealing with climate change will significantly be different. But if we don't measure the progress and the way, the pathways which people have taken and create a comparative framework, agriculture has been a monopoly normally. The governments do a lot of this investment in agri stack and data and everything, and then innovation ecosystem is generally handled by the private sector, in terms of startups and a lot of agtech companies, agribusiness companies and there. So I think what we felt was that if there was a way of comparing these performances of these various governments and ecosystems and platforms, then that will help these countries and geographies to learn from each other, systems to learn from each other, and we will be able to benchmark performance in some kind of a way. It's not an easy task because we are dealing with technology, we are dealing with agriculture both. So the way we look at it is that data gets collected in many places. We have a big investment in agri data stack in India, and different states are investing in it differently. We have investments now coming up, big ones in UP, Maharashtra, almost like 800 million being invested in these states for more kind of data and digitally driven transformation. So if we are able to create a competitive model between various states, competition not for the sake of competition, but whether the competition is leading to impact and what kind of pathways are they taking, and we are able to understand how they are progressing in this, I think we will be able to create an architecture where we can bring competition into a monopolistic sector like agriculture, where people can learn from each other in a more systematic kind of way. Now, the main challenge we have is that if we just look at digital public infrastructure, initially the phase is about investing in digital public infrastructure, the data platform, and the other digitization efforts, whether it's digitizing soil data, it's digitizing farm registries, geotagged farm IDs, farmer IDs. So you need a foundational investment in infrastructure. And different states will approach infrastructure in a different way. The states which invest more systematically will go forward faster, and they will be able to convert data into use cases. And what I like about the digitization is we are looking at use cases more strongly. That did data lead to increase in change in extension systems? Did it lead to access to credit? Did it lead to other changes to market access? Did the value chain start becoming more efficient as a result of investment in data? So I think the use case orientation, I think, is a very important part of this index. And then finally comes the impact indicator on productivity, market access, and all the conventional agriculture index. So how do you combine technology, data, and then a lot of states are dealing with startups and innovations in a very different way. So basically the innovation ecosystem and the policies to really make the innovations run faster will be different. So I think it's a composite index which will have to look at many aspects and then bring it together and then see whether the promise of investing in data is getting converted into impact on agriculture and ultimately impact on smallholders. I think you have very good group there, and I think it's good that a lot of people, like on the competitors side, I think Institute of Competitors has done this across many sectors, industry and all that, to get that expertise of how do you develop an index in a competitiveness is there. CGIR has a lot of data on how technologies have been used, and Agri Collaboratory is the kind of agency which brings technology and agriculture together. But I think it will not be done by these three institutions. We will have to create ecosystem effect into doing this. We as a World Bank are committed to using the index, and we are already using some elements of these data on terms of comparing between these geographies. And I think we look forward to what happens today and then what happens in terms of developing this process. Thank you very much for inviting me, and look forward to the deliberations today. And thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Parmesh.
Thank you so much. Do you think we can take a quick question if you allow, Parmesh? I know it's late for you.
No, I think they're fine. I'm already wide awake now.
So anyone has any specific question for Parmesh, because he sits across all geographies and is able to, perhaps respond or understand what is happening across. So till the time someone thinks about it, Parmesh, so if you look at digitalization, I see a lot of work being done in World Bank, in India, it is being done in Africa, all the global south. Where do you think maximum learnings can be derived by us? Is there any pocket which is a center of excellence where use cases are the maximum?
So I think clearly it is the geographies where there is a tech ecosystem already in place, where the digital is there. So agriculture and digital go together. You cannot do digitization where tech is not happening. So I would say in Africa, we clearly have Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal. These are the tech hubs of Africa. So those are there. India, I think clearly we have a very good, rich competition happening between states in terms of using data stack and creating use cases. So I think India is definitely. Then I think East Asia particularly, I think I would say Vietnam, Indonesia are the two geographies which are really making very systemic investments into that. And then I would also say that Turkey, a very big middle income country, which is already an agribusiness destination, I think they are making almost a $500 million investment in climate smart agriculture now, and which the data and digital investment is almost like 15 or 20% of that. So I think you can see globally that the countries which want to become competitive in agriculture are investing in data and digital and the innovation ecosystems in a very systematic way. And I think if India wants to become and aspire to become an export house, it will have to really compete with those countries which are investing in different way. Now you see another challenge we have is when EUDR bringing in a lot of kind of traceability in terms of they will buy those commodities from cocoa and coffee in a way where there is digital traceability. So if you don't have investment in an end-to-end digital traceability, you will start losing some of the markets which will become more discerning about taking your products if they are not sourced in a regenerative or a kind of sustainable kind of way. So I think that will come in from those countries, middle income countries and larger countries which are trying to not only do agriculture for subsistence but also do in a more competitive kind of way. And then we have the Brazils of this world, Mexico's and Argentina's of this. In Latin America definitely is really investing in a big time in data and digital. So I think there's at least 15 countries which are making more substantive investments than others, and they also want to know how this is. In Brazil is investing in 6 states. They want to know cross-state comparison now between how this is being invested in. So every day and every week we see demands coming from different countries who want to know how are we doing, is it worth investing in 15% of the investment in agriculture going towards data and digitization, is it worth it? And where are we doing well and where we are not doing well? So I think this is a very early stage in which all these investments have been made only in the last 5 or 6 years. So
Absolutely.
I think it will be critical now at this stage if we are able to develop a framework, it could become cross-country and it could become cross-state in larger countries as well. I'll stop there. I don't want to monopolize your time. I become very hyperactive because I've had coffee now. So I will now leave it back to you, and I will engage. I will stay for an hour more and I will listen to conversation.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Parmesh. But
Parmesh.
here's somebody starting off the two-way conversation.
Hi, Pamesh, and thank you for these inputs. I'm Chirag from Grant Thornton. I have a very small question. Like what UPI has done for a country like India, right? And the complete financial independence which has come to bottom of the pyramid. Any such products across the globe of similar fashion is available, which can really transform agriculture to this same level.
Very good question. I think a lot of things are being tried. I think we are testing some of the similar kind of products which bring the farm ID, the farmer ID, and probably the transaction, the financial transaction part of it, so that there is kind of kind of a framework like UPI. It's like if you take a universal farm identity and all that, which we are able to do that. So we are doing some pilots with Gates Foundation and number of other technology companies, fintech companies. But I think I have a lot of hope for India to build a kind of a sandbox on this and be able to develop a similar product there. I think I see clearly that Africa is trying a similar product across 6 countries, and Latin America is also trying it. But I am not saying that we have a similar product available yet, but a lot of things. I think the direction where I think globally we have to go is that, what you described as.
All right. A very quick one, if you don't mind, Mitul, because we are now.
Hi Parmesh, my name is Mitul. I am from Microsafe Consulting. So thanks for a very good overview. So we've been talking about DPI approach to everything, and DPI approach also applies to agriculture. So India has been doing it, or at least in agriculture we are attempting. But one of the key ingredients for DPI approach is to have standards. Right? For example, UPI and all those things became successful because there was simple one use case, simple standards. But agriculture, those standards I think don't exist, right? The market participants and integrate. So any thoughts, any effort that is happening which makes you optimistic about DPI approach for agriculture and how the ecosystem can integrate?
So I would say that on the Agri stack at least, I think they have developed about 11 organizing standards on the data part of it. It's not across the board, but on the data side, I think that they are developing standards, and clearly they are going and talking to the kind of Ekjot and Nandan Nilekani's group, and there's a whole DPI group being set up across institutions, which is setting the similar standards as they were set for UPI and UID and all that. They're trying to set up those standards, and I think we are getting in that direction, and I think they will announce those standards soon. But agriculture being a kind of a mixed bag, that center cannot do everything, states are doing different things, and there's less agreement on standards also. There is a little bit of a consensus building required to be done. It requires a very strong leadership push from one of the two of the institutions. I think we need something similar, an autonomous institution like the unique ID authority or something in agriculture also, to be an SPV, a special autonomous institution to be set up, which is relatively autonomous and is not just sitting in Ministry of Agriculture. If that happens, then we will see that movement coming in. It's more the institutional architecture which is more important. Standards, there's a lot of work going on, but if we don't set an institution which has a little bit credibility across stakeholders and across states, then it will be very difficult to do that. That's my current thinking on this.
Thanks, Parmesh. Thank you so much. And I think with that, I will request, I'm right at the back here with Ratish. So Ratish, as I mentioned earlier, was one of the earlier backers for us. And the initial seed was sown by him. So it's important that we bring him in and get his perspective. Over to you, Ratish.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks, Parmesh, for setting the context so well. There used to be this website in the internet called ideasforfree.com. The point was that ideas are actually very easy to do. So as much as you're being kind enough to give the credit for the seed, I think seeds, I shouldn't say this in an agriculture community, but ideas by themselves are very easy to do. Credit really to the TAC team to have fleshed it out fully. I want to keep my comments brief. I really want to just talk about 3 things. One is like an origin story. Like, why did we even come to begin to solve this problem? Second is why TAC? Why should TAC do this? And 3 is what is the role for all of us in this room? Because how we see ourselves in this room is a very, very important determinant for the success of what we are doing. So I just want to talk about these 3 things very briefly. So we used to have these weekly calls as part of the TAC where we used to discuss the ecosystem in general, progress, and the status of our initiatives. And during one of these conversations, I'd come across this work that Orissa government was doing around digitization of agriculture. And what we realized is that that's interesting, but the immediate thought was, who else is doing something around this space, right? Which other government is actually taking initiatives? And we realized that that question is not just a question for TAC. Every entrepreneur who's working in agriculture would probably want to know, where are states today with respect to their digitization progress? Every philanthropist that is wanting to fund systemic initiatives is asking the same question. And every person who's looking to make commercial returns, for example, is also looking at what are fertile grounds for us to build on the infrastructure that the state is establishing. And for us, then it clearly struck that that is the sort of use case that we really need to solve for, And if there is a way we can create a framework that allows us to understand where states are with respect to their digitization focus today, we felt that that's a great signal for the ecosystem to recognize where and how to operate, and also where to maximize collaboration opportunities. And for us, as we were discussing it, it really sort of solved for two delays in the system. The one delay in the system is from the time a government sort of invests in an initiative to the entrepreneurs, the problem solvers, the practitioners realizing where it is. That is one delay. And the more that delay is, the more the investments and the efforts lag. The second delay for us is when one state does it, how soon can the other states actually learn where they are relative to that? We are a country where competitive federalism is a reality, right? More than now, I think in the future, we're going to see centers as state governments as a hub of action. And a lot of times we look at what can we do to enable states, but to even be able to provide them the signaling, the observability of where are they corresponding to other states with respect to digitalization, we felt could be an immense value. Right? So the origin story is to solve for these two delays in the system. The second question that I wanted to answer is why TAC, right? Because anybody can actually build this framework. And Nipun during his introduction, talked about a non-compete initiative that is going to build on existing ecosystems. It's actually a great principle, but it's hard to operationalize. It's very easy to be a practitioner organization because you know your reality, you're grounded in your reality, you're solving a particular problem. But as a non-compete organization, you're sort of defined by what you don't do, which is compete, right? So then where is the value? And one of the things that has always helped us think about this problem is really to say, if there are mission-aligned, competent people that are actually working on the ground, what are some rails we can build that will enable and accelerate their ability to solve the problem, And we do a lot of, and all of us, I'm sure, think about systems, and systems usually they say work at 4 levels, right? One level is really at a capacity level, which is solving a problem at a particular level, building the innovation, etc. The second is what they call feedback loops, right? Which is how do we build information flows, observability to make sure that the feedback loops are shorter in the system. The third is where we influence rules and policies and structures that define the work we do, and the last is the paradigm. And for me, I've always realized that the feedback loop level conversation, right, which is making things observable, enables everyone's ability to solve the problem better. And I do believe that there is no better place than an organization that is non-aligned, non-compete, and is really looking to build the ecosystem that is best placed to solve a problem like this, right? Because there is always, with frameworks like this, the question of agenda. Like, what is your agenda in solving this, right? And it is a way to sort of solve for an agenda. And by stating themselves at a place that sort of really builds the entire ecosystem and not just one stakeholder, I do believe TAC has an opportunity to build this as a good that is relevant as much to business, as much to civil society as it is to the government. And that is really why, and I hope through conversations today, this becomes more and more apparent and visible. And the third question that I wanted to answer was, what are we doing in the room? This is a small room. These are, we're not having a gala party with 250 people. And there's a reason for that, right? Because a lot of times conversations like these can become where, a place where we are all consumers of content. So somebody is telling us something and we consume it and passively walk away from it. I think that is the worst thing we can do to the conversation that we are having today. Right? Because creating a framework is actually easy part, you know. They always say writing a book is 20%, getting people to read it is 80%. Right? I would say in a framework's case, creating the index, sorry Sanjay, I'm going to tell this to you, creating the framework is 5%. For all the hard work we've done, we've crossed 5% of the journey. There is 95% of it. And the 95% of it really comes on the basis of a few things. One is it needs to have salience. And I call political salience, political not just as government. Political meaning that the relevance of the framework is very, very important. And the relevance is only comes through with what Parmesh also rightly highlighted around usage and engagement, number one. Right? It also comes through accrued value. The more you use a framework, the better it gets. Right? And how do we create accrued value around it? Right? And the third is its ability to get better as soon as possible. So the channels of iteration that we can create. And all three of this, the salience, the accrued value, and the speed of iteration depends on all of you in the room. Right? There is, irrespective of what TSC can do, they cannot force these three things. They will have to rely on an ecosystem, proactive, committed stakeholders such as yourselves that are in the room that can actually unlock the value of this, provide the feedback on where it is relevant, use it effectively, and find incentives for stakeholders to make this relevant in the ecosystem. And I do really believe that it's a collective effort. And for TSC to make this successful, they will have to play that invisible leadership role where the AgDx is not owned by them, but it's owned by this room and hopefully a much larger ecosystem of stakeholders. So on behalf of them, I really just extend the invitation for all of us to really build our imagination on not only what it is, but what really could be. And that really is something that we can all do together. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You just suddenly deflated me right now by saying it is 5%. Yeah, so someone was asking me, why did you call it AgDx 1.0? That's the very reason why we said. Someone said, what have you envisioned for the future? I said, I don't know. Right? And the best example, since I play a lot of sports, is the IPL. Right? When you play the IPL, did we envision that we would be here 20 years now? All the new rules will come in. So it is going to evolve every year, and there will be inputs from everyone, and hopefully we'll be in a better state. And with people like Ratish and Parmesh guiding us, I'm sure, and with people like you supporting us, we will make sure. So we are landing up with questions. We keep discussing, we've done this work, what should we do? We're saying we're transparent, we're open, upload it. Let it be visible to everyone. So those are some of the conversations we are having every day. We keep the principles and the value system, say, look, this is what we are. So we find it difficult because in different walks of life, we are different people. We do TSC for a part of the day, then we're doing a for-profit somewhere else. It's very difficult to switch roles. So we are going through that, and we would welcome feedback or guidance to us. Hey, you are not doing what you promised to. So we will go wrong. We will go wrong, but expect people like all of you to perhaps raise the flag and say, that's not what you committed to. So with this, I will now hand over to Dr. Amit Kapoor. So as I said, he is a visiting professor in Stanford and also runs the Institute for Competitiveness. How he runs it across he takes a flight from here to San Francisco like we take a flight from here to Bombay. So that's his way of how he survives, I don't know. But here he is, and he's the person who's supporting us. He does indices for a living. So over to him, let's hear his perspective and what he has in mind. Doctor.
Yeah, thank you. It's absolutely a pleasure and a delight to be collaborating with this, but I disagree with the previous speaker absolutely vehemently. And I disagree with him for one single point, that developing an index is 95% of the effort, because if your academic credentials for the effort are not right, what you get out of it is going to be fairly useless. So even if you're actually trying to develop a global index and if it is not embedded in theory, then nothing on practice can happen. So I think this is where my biggest danger for all these set of conversations is. I have a huge dissonance between what industry thinks and what academics think and what public policy has to be. Academics get closer to public policy, industrialists are far away from it because they're exploitative. So how do we get this whole dominion right is a question that we need to look at. And that is that we need to embed everything in theory, and we have had this experience of developing various indices across the world. So the most important one was the Social Progress Index that we developed. I've been part of the team which did the Global Competitiveness Index as well. That is the World Economic Forum thing that we did with Mike Porter. And when you talk about developing an index, there are certain set of principles that we need to follow. One is that whether we are able to measure something right or not. Because if we are not able to measure, then that means there is nothing that we can actually take about in terms of really creating an impact over a period of time. And that measure has to be done over a period of time from an iterative basis. So there is one point that can we develop an index and which gets authenticated, which gets even better over a period of time becomes exceedingly important. So that is what we have to look at. In terms of, say, the other examples, like some of the examples that we have really looked at, I would request you to look at some of the indices that we have developed for the Government of India. One of them is the Export Competitiveness Index or the Innovation Index that we do, the Ministry for Housing Indices of Ease of Living, etc. So they're all deeply embedded in theory, and that is what drives policy in many of the ways. In fact, I can just tell you about the power of indices, and that is if you really look at the Aspirational District Program. Aspirational District Program, from my point of view, has been one of the most successful programs in terms of implementation of ideas. And when you talk about this, we deeply embedded this in a theoretical construct in terms of assessing what the outcomes should be. And that is what we were able to do. Of course, there are some positives and negatives within that program, which I'm not going to discuss, but we looked at absolutely close to about 70 odd indicators on social aspects, and we found that how 50% of the districts have done better, etc., and what kind of policy actions need to be taken for moving further. So those are the things that really, make a very important aspect in terms of development. So, we need to understand that when you talk about R&D, this is about R&D, all right? And if you really don't have the right product, you don't have the right market, you don't have the right audience, and so 95% of it is not the 5% that people are talking about. Thank you.
Okay, so now, so you realize what we are stuck with? We're stuck with Ratish now, Dr. Amit Kapoor. So that is the beauty of this entire discussion. The conversation is open. Let me assure you, there's not a single day which goes past when I have not had an argument with Nipun. I disagree with him on several things. So, and yet we don't mind a drink in the evening, right? So that's where we are. And so what we will do is Ram Dhulipala coming on, or is he along with me?
He's on, but bring him in as you.
Okay, fine. So what I'm going to do right now is walk you through some slides. Okay, and all the people sitting here, especially who worked with me earlier, they used to make slides for me earlier. Okay, right? That's the reason why I called them, to tell them that I can do it also on my own. So, with all people who worked with me, Surya, I know you have a battery of people behind you who do it for you, but I do it on my own. So someone said, how do you go about it? I said, wait, on my study table, I have my washroom behind that. I walk to the washroom, I look at myself and say, bloody well, get on with the job. And I go back on the table and I do it. My skills have improved. So this is a skilling exercise which has happened. Nipun has had skills the last 2-3 days. Instead of focusing on this, he's been focusing on how to do the YouTube ka. So he's learning about YouTube. कैसे YouTube में कैसे करना है translate? तो Zoom में कैसे करना है? So he spent a lot of time doing that. Whilst I sweated out making this, he did that. So he's picked up a skill. We have picked up. But thanks to people like Siddhant, Navya, who really helped, and Sheen is there, and Ananya. So they have really helped out. So we done, as usual, I've done a bit, and Simanta saw what I was doing. I was just standing and telling them, "Is slide में इसको लाल कर दो, इसको पीला कर दो." Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through. So some of you have seen the presentations I've done. There's no difference from the earlier times. There are a lot of hyperlinks. Everything is there. So I'm going to. People have talked about frameworks. Dr. Amit Kapoor has talked about frameworks. I will bring that framework to life. So you understand what I'm talking about. I'll give you 3 examples of frameworks. I will talk about what World Bank has done. I will talk about what Dr. Amit Kapoor talked about, Social Progress Index. Third thing I will talk about, what I very famously always refer to, the India Today survey of state of states. That's also an index at the end of the day. It triggers competition, it triggers lots of things happening in various states. So I will talk about those. Then I will talk about that preview, then we'll take you through what is the framework all about, then what are the digital initiatives in select Indian states. So let me tell you, the beauty of having worked with Dr. Kapoor and Sheen and Ananya is they've driven us nuts. They're saying, what you're saying is English language. Give us the theory behind it. Give us. So we've been doing research. So anything that you see on this slide out here, I will give you a complete backing and papers to support it. So there's nothing which is mentioned there. It may appear as a simple parameter like farmland or crop registry or a water registry, but we are backing it with data, what is happening across the world. So you'll find all those references. Sheen will come in and talk about those and let you know how she's gone about it. So we've been driven by that, and people like us who've been in the corporate world, it is not easy to adapt to what Sheen and company and Dr. Amit Kapoor do with us. It takes a long time. But this is all backed. So hence, you will see about 50, 100 slides on research, just in case someone says, please show it to us. So you got it with us. But we will give you a glimpse into that. Then, at the end of the day, once the entire framework is ready, what will it look like for a particular state? What will the state get? Right? So I will show you a hypothetical framework with the marks, etc. What would it look like for a state of Karnataka, for example? Okay, just please go back. Then I'll do use cases for government. So this is, I've got nothing there. So I'm going to ask you now, where do you see use cases for this? Okay? And Mukul, you be ready because you spoke a lot about use cases day before with me. So you will have to talk about how you will use this. And then AgDx N.0, where do we want to take it to? What are the things that we want to incorporate? We'll talk about it, and then the way ahead. So this is the rough, board that I have. So I'll run through this, and you're free to stop me, ask me questions, or I will ask you questions. Okay? So you can open you're allowed to open your two-pager anytime. Okay, let's go through it. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so this is the World Bank. Can't see the top. Can you minimize that? You take it to the bottom. Take this right to the bottom, please. No, take that. Let's see the bottom. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Can you minimize that also? What Ram did? You may miss out something. No, minimizing doesn't mean that he's off. Ram, can you hear us? Okay, so Ram Dhulipala is from CGIR. They also support us with a lot of research. I think people who do not know CGIR, it's a collection of about 14 research institutes in Agri. So they do a lot of supporting us on the Agri side. Because someone may ask that you spent only a few years in Agri, what do you know about Agri? So we have support on that. We support on indices, we support on Agri, and we have World Bank also supporting us.
We have a 50-year anniversary today.
Today.
So it's a bit of a clash right in the morning.
50-year anniversary, yeah. So, for those who want to know, hi Ram.
Hi, good morning, Sanjeev.
Good morning, good morning. You are on air, so everyone can see you, so please be polite with me. Okay?
Of course.
All right, so this is the report, and I would urge some of you who are in Agri to go through this report. But I'm going to take out just a couple of pages of this to show you. So, World Bank Agri Digital, could I move forward? Yeah. So, focus on a few things. It evaluates countries on the state of development of 3 foundations. They're doing it at a country level. It's like country level competitiveness or country level progress for digital transformation. They're not getting into nitty-gritty. So we picked up some of the things from here, and we're incorporating these in our framework. But we're going far greater detail, right down to the village level, right down to the plot level. Yeah, so it's a very simple unweighted average they have done. We picked up 3 indices: digital infrastructure and data connectivity, market access, and electricity access. We picked up these 3 things and we plugged them into our index. Inspiration came from there. Could you move forward? So if you go through this, you will find similar things. What is the sub-index? What is the indicator weighter? So there's a lot of statistics, a lot of maths involved in this, which is where IFC would perhaps come in and support us and tell us as to whether these things can be proven or not, whether the weightage is right. So that's where we will take a lot of help and support from IFC. Carry on. Yeah. The next is what Dr. Kapoor talked about, social progress index. He's got several indices. You go into the site of Institute for Competitiveness, you'll find this. The reason why I chose this is because it will tell you a construct of the framework and a construct of the index. What does it look like? Everyone has spoken about it. What does it look like? So basically an index like this, they're going down to the state level. So it's an important thing that I picked up. Why? Because they're going down to the state level, at a district level. So they will talk about the overall framework, which has categories like basic human needs, foundation of well-being and opportunity. Then they have indicators, indicator definitions, where have they picked up the data from, and which year was the data. You'll realize that a lot of these frameworks depend on data which is available in the public domain. You have to pick it up. So it becomes difficult, but some is relevant, some is not relevant. So our basic thought process is that when we launch this and when we're picking up data, I'll pick up only data what is publicly available. States may get a 0 at the end of the day. So I learned it, this entire thing from the Morgan Stanley Index for Sustainability. So I was head of sustainability for ITC as one of my portfolios. I didn't get any marks. I was just at the bottom. And I went and rang up and told them, what's up? How can Morgan Stanley do this to us? They said, but we don't see any data. I said, but so kuch hai? I've got everything. He said, that is in your drawer, in your PCs. You can't see it on the portal. So the next 6 months, we took efforts to put everything on the portal. This is ITC. Only then we were able to perhaps go and say that, okay, sustain, because investments from foreign institutions, depend a lot on these indices. So the finance function said that the sustainability thing is not good, so you need to do so. I will only pick up data which is publicly available, I will not pick it up. So that's another rule. When we do the measurement, we will pick it up straight from the public domain. Carry on. So overall, this is just to give you a framework, and much like this will be other frameworks which we will talk about in as far as the digital, the AgDx is concerned. So 3 key dimensions they're looking at. Foundations. Under each one of them, there are various pillars. Nutrition and basic. So there are 4 pillars under this. There are 3-4 pillars there, 3-4 pillars there. Sheen, if you have any comment, you please come in, because I may be treading into your territory completely. Okay, so if I'm wrong, just say I'm wrong. All right? Okay. So, and each one of them will have indicators. So could you click on this to make it simple? Or yeah, click on this. Okay. So imagine we are talking about nutrition and basic medical care, and these are the 13 parameters or 13 indicators which we'll have to check to basically give a score to this particular pillar. So it is not as simple as what we say. When you make a framework and you make an index out of it, it means going through this rigor and picking it up.
And the source.
And the source. And the issue with Agri is, I'll show you through our research, no 2 states have the same data. So we were struggling with it. So I will share what work we've done, but we are struggling with it. But that's what the journey is. That's the nature of the animal that we have embraced. So we will have to go through this, and hopefully some of you will help and contribute. Anwala sir? ठीक बोल रहे हैं ना सर? अच्छा ठीक. So I must take his approval for everything that I do. Please, yes, yeah, you can go back, please. Back to the next slide. Yeah, carry on. Please. Yeah. So similarly, so I can walk you through any one of these. So this was a pretty good example to give you people insights. Then closer home, let's go home. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, I mean, we've all seen this. Again, I want to just bring forward another example so that the idea of an index is embedded. Next one, please. So this is it. So State of States ranking 2022, 12 dimensions. When you evaluate a state, there are 12 dimensions: governance, economy, infrastructure. This is how you evaluate a state. And then you carry on, and this is how you do the ranking of a state. So even the Agri Digital Index, once it comes out of a framework, will look much like this. And then you would like to get into one single parameter. Let's go and see what does agriculture look like. So I could dive into one component and see, and believe me, there are enough people that one has interacted with in the IAS, etc. They are driving this. That why am I behind this state? what can I learn from another state? So people are picking up things from each other, and this is driving the entire ecosystem. So that's our belief. Our hypothesis is that an index and a framework could perhaps catalyze the entire movement towards digitalization. Otherwise, it's not going to move forward. Each state is on its own path. Someone talked about standards. So standards will have to evolve. All states. So maybe we will be catalyzing certain standards that if you want data to be put up, please put it up in this particular format. We could perhaps catalyze this, but I do not know how it will pan out as we go forward. So I will now talk about the index 1.0 or the framework 1.0. So, so this is our framework 1.0. We have what I talked about, dimensions, larger categories, then we have pillars, then we have indicators of further granularity. Some indicators have sub-indicators. If I talk about land, if I talk about soil, it will get down into smaller and smaller. Is the state giving NPK detail? Is the state giving the SOC? Is the state giving those details? But another question we are asking ourselves is that, what detail should we get into right now? So I was reminded that in an exam in my college, the entire class got 0. No one scored. So is that a good paper to set or a bad paper to set? I thought that was a bad way to set a paper, where everyone gets 0. At least set a paper where kuch log to pass ho jaye. Because you need to set standards. Everyone is 0, so everyone is happy about it. Relative grading, so you're okay. So the whole idea is that in the initial stages, that is why AgDx 1.0, the whole idea is to try and first of all measure, has the state government even wanted to do it? If it is a soil registry, do they have soil registry? Maybe in the next version we'll say soil registry at a village and a plot level. I'll get into further detail as we go along. So lots of feedback we've received from people in this room where people have said that this is not good enough for me, but I have to also take on a scale which will help me motivate some other states to move forward. So the dimension that we have come up with, everyone in this room could have an opinion on this. It's taken me about 5-6 months to even arrive at this. You can still say this is not, but this is the thing that we have arrived at. So we have 6 dimensions: farmer and farm, infrastructure and connectivity, soil input and seeds, environmental monitoring, governance, access to market. At an overall level, there will be 6 dimensions that we will be looking at. We'll be rating states on these 6 dimensions. So 6 dimensions will have certain pillars. So farm and farmer will have farmer and land details. Rajiv Chawla, Agri Stack, so we can pick up some of those things from there. Okay, things are happening on the ground, right? Though Pradeep from Satshur will say, how often will you do a census for 140 million acres? You need satellite imagery, so he'll push his bit. So we don't know how often will you get will the data be relevant or not, we don't know. Crop data. Now, do we need crop data? Do we need crop history? People who really want to do advice, they say, I want to know what are the last 3 or 4 crops. Last 3 or 4 crops can determine the soil fertility. There are so many things which come in. Infrastructure will bring in, pick up some learnings from World Bank. Digital infrastructure, irrigation and water management, access to electricity. Next, and soil input, agri inputs, fertilizers. So I will get into details. I'm not stopping here, so I'll give you all further details in this as to what are we going to measure ultimately. Soil health, seed and seed quality. And I want everything digitized. I want everything to be visible. If I am Mukul or I am Shobet or I am Siddharth or I am Simanta or I am George Curry, if I'm working in the startup community, you ask them, 50, 60, 70% of the money and effort is spent in first getting basic data about the region where they want to operate. Won't it be brilliant if that basic data is available, then innovation can ride on top of that. Today, effort is going into getting the basic data. So that's the attempt out here. Then environmental monitoring and precision agriculture, we put in a few aspects here. Then governance, innovation and government policies and support. Which government is announcing policy? Which government is saying open policy? I will put up data. How many people in how many forums I've met with saying, मंत्री जी आप बोल रहे हैं डेटा अवेलेबल है, पिछले 1 साल से आपने चक्कर काट रहा हूँ, अब बोलिए ना कि आपने 1 साल से कोई डेटा नहीं दिया हमारे पास. People are giving data, and when the data comes, You do not know how much to believe the data. So those are the aspects which several people in this room could vibe with. Mehtab, you would agree with that? Yep, okay. I have not given you a choice to say no. Then access to market and finance, financial inclusion.
Can I just comment?
Yes, sir, please.
Just one brief suggestion. I'll be loud enough, even if it doesn't work. I find, Sanjeev, where would you put the acceptability by the rural or the agriculture households of whatever you, because I find this is basically coming from a centralized point of view. This
Okay,
framework.
okay.
I haven't found, if governance includes, it's more about running a program and running a policy or implementing a policy. I don't see the human capital in rural area, agriculture area. It varies significantly from one state to another. The acceptability, the institutions, people's institutions, that could also be a one group which will determine, why was green revolution accepted more in certain pockets? Why was white revolution accepted in certain pockets? Why blue revolution is accepted in certain pockets? You could say more water availability and etc., which will come in some of those parameters. But yes, people's institutions also drive it. At what level they exist, unless you bring that in as a pillar,
Okay.
and there is no measure. I find it very, very, from our point of view, we are creating a framework, not from the point of view of the people who will accept it, who will ultimately be determining the use case.
So we've kept for the next 1 month also to pick up inputs. We've been getting inputs. We didn't get this input, but I have another section where I talk about what is the future. Someone asked me, where is livestock in this? Right? 25% GDP once here. So I have that pillar coming in. But I am saying, should I bring it in 1.0? Should I bring it 2.0? Whereas FPOs, I've got it. It's coming, but have I incorporated right now? No. I'm also getting a bit drowned with the amount of data, etc. we are dealing. But definitely, we'll take it on board. We'll take it on board. That is a valid point. Yeah, Sheen, yes. Yeah, I'll give you the mic.
Hello. Hi, I'm audible. So I would just like to respond to the question that Sir just posed. So what we are looking at from AgDx framework is exactly from the point of view of farmers, and I'll get to the point of how. So when we're looking at the farmer land records or any parameter, we are saying that we need to look at this parameter at state level, district level, block level. We really need to go to those talukas and the level of geography that we're looking at. It will not find any success without the rural economy being integrated. So this is why the framework, even if 1 or 2 indicators that we are able to digitize, that if I were to give an example, how much from the DPI, that the savings that have been accrued in 2022 is just 1.7% of the GDP. So we are talking about a $600 billion industry by 2030 if we are able to do some efforts under digitization. This success, the success of green revolution is also the reason why we are having the problems in the economy, the reason why Bihar being so fertile has not been able to increase the productivity of the country and contribute to the Indian economy. So we are still stuck with the same problem. So at the end of the day, it has to be farmer centric. And this is why we have, framework is, I'll get into details about the framework, but the main important part of the story is that this is farmer centric. Everything that will come out of this index or what we're trying to measure has to benefit farmer. Otherwise, this exercise is not going to be very helpful. So this is something that we have kept in mind, and this is something that, all this has been brought by the evidence that we see in Africa, US, and because when we talk about doubling farmers' income, I think it has been, certainly we have forgotten about that. And farmers are 42% of the, agriculture drives 42% of our population. So farmers, without doubt, are the pillar and the main center. And the state governments and the startups ecosystem and other academic institutions, we just become those partners in making lives of farmers easy. So that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, definitely. But the whole idea was this only, that people come and this
I
is a
think
conversation.
a very relevant point. Actually, whenever we talk about technology, so we talk about two things. One is access to technology, second is use of technology. So most of the indicators are around access of technology, or access to various things related to technology, whether available or not. When you talk about use, it's very difficult to quantify, because use you will be able to quantify when it happens, and it would happen when it will happen, and then you'll get to know, you'll be doing postmortem, why it happened, why it did not happen. So we have to look at some leading indicators. The leading indicators for use would be whether there is a readiness among the community that we're talking about, in case farmers, to use those technology elements. Now, unfortunately, most of the farmers, or large part of farmers, use technology, but they are not so much digital literate to use the kind of technologies we are talking about. Some of them are, of course, probably some of the influential farmers are, but in the poorer states, the smallholder farmers, they're not so much conversant with technology still. So then we have to look at the ecosystem that could support these farmers to onboard. And I'll use a parallel framework here. In case of financial inclusion, we talk so much about financial inclusion, success about financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is a success because there is an assisted mode on the ground to help the low and middle income segment access digital technology. We are very happy using UPI. How are the farmers and other low income people using it in rural areas? They are using it through BC agents. They are in some ways helping them use technology. So I think if we can put some parameters around the ecosystem for agriculture that can get the farmers use those technologies. So I think that would be good. That's all.
Yeah, sure, please.
This will be, thank you, from a perspective of total ignorance, so hopefully it will add some insight. I am a stakeholder in agriculture. I eat 3 meals a day, so all of us are. But I think if I got your point correct, you're making a more nuanced point that many frameworks see their so-called beneficiaries as passive recipients. And their voice, their norms, their aspirations, what works, is often does not become part of it. And
give you an example, Sanjeev.
Haji sir, bilkul.
You know, why women-led milk revolution happened in Gujarat? Women were little more, the society was a little more free. You try the same model in Haryana, Punjab, West, Bihar, they will milk and give the milk to their husband to be taken to somewhere else.
Absolutely.
So this status of society on certain aspects needs to be measured for acceptability of any technology, especially which is digital, in transforming or making a case use for agriculture per se. So I'm just giving a very simple thing. There are institutions, informal institutions exist. Somebody got a Nobel Prize for institutions this year in economics. I'm saying, why certain societies develop faster than others? It's not any of these. Some of them will impact across communities, but that itself is a framework which comes in number 2. Fine, I'm okay with it. Thank you.
No, it is incorporated a bit in some of these, but definitely.
Governance, is a different thing. You are governing a program. It gives you a different parameter.
Sir, it gives, but we're all getting down to the farmer level. I'll get into the nitty-gritties. Yes, ma'am.
We
Please.
can use some other word rather
Okay.
than govern.
Okay.
So, to Sir's point, I think maybe there's a potential for using proxy indicators, percentage of women in agriculture. There's also now data coming out of digital penetration, a gender breakup of that. And there is a variation across states already, if you look at some of the data that's there. So maybe to start off with, you could explore using some proxy indicators to at least assess the state of the society.
For instance, in Andhra, I used to travel quite a lot. Andhra is more receptive to technologies because younger farmer, tech-enabled farmer, youth
Yes.
is involved in agriculture. Where the people carrying out, you look to the northern part, Haryana, Punjab, Western UP, youth is not there. It is only the older people, 40 and above. So, I mean,
Yeah, so there are state, regional, so that's why I always say that don't talk agriculture in a particular state, in a region could be very different for the same
what
crop.
I'm saying, I'm
Yeah.
suggesting what is possible, Sanjeev.
Yes.
Something on,
This is okay.
capital, human capital, societal capital, to accept
Thank you.
change.
That's the purpose of this.
Particularly to this thing.
No, no,
If it
ठीक है.
could be
There are
added
some
to it,
aspects you bring in later, we can plug them in. There is a which nothing is etched in
all
stone.
this is excellent. All this is excellent.
Nothing is etched in stone out here. Yes,
Thank
please.
you. Thank you.
Just wanted to, re-articulate sort of what
Yes,
we're
please.
discussing at the moment. So I think the health of the social capital in the agricultural ecosystem, that's what is missing here, which would include institutions, which would include issues like migrant laborers, child labor and all that, especially when we started today out by discussing what the Europe wants and what the essential elements of sustainability, especially when today some commodities in Indian agriculture are catering to the global markets.
Yeah.
I take the example of textile for example. So recently a report came out and Inditex and H&M, these are the two global textile giants. So they largely procure better cotton. That's a standard, so that's what they procure largely. And despite that better cotton certification, this report basically, ripped them for all the social, misdoings that were happening in Brazil and all that. And they caught a lot of flack for that. So that certainly in today's time, when eventually we are trying to take our value chains to cater to ultimately a global market, that has to be an element, the health of the social capital. Yes.
For example, why a hip hop song, regional song, gets accepted more
And then the other one
is because
they bring in elements not only in a regional language, but the content is such that it's more relating to them.
Sure.
And that's why certain numbers are viral, certain are not. And that's how acceptability of the population to accept some of those changes will be determined by what she was saying. Could be 1 factor, 2 factors, 3 factors, 4, etc. That I'm not defining.
Sure, sir.
Thank you, boss.
Yes. Here, please. Bilkul.
Couple of observations over here. First is, I think, like you rightly mentioned, this is the starting point. This entire framework has to evolve. I think what you need to look at is two things. You need to look at data sources. Some of those might be reported by the state government, but I think with Dr. Bhimala over here, there is one very important report which comes out, that is the district action plan of every district, which is a very standardized report which is prepared for every district in this way. I think, I don't know if you've looked at it already. If you haven't, you must look at it. And maybe explore an opportunity to collaborate with some of these institutions. And NABARD is a fantastic institution. They have
They have not responded.
Huh?
They want to collaborate, but they didn't respond.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
No,
I'm
but
sorry.
at least
Am
there
I
is
saying
some.
correctly?
Of course, sir.
But there is data available over there.
So what we can do is,
And there might be other sources, so let's kind of just look at
But
and
he's
just
trying
give you
to-
those data
So,
sources.
so what we can do is, after his comment, give me time to proceed, so that at least if there is something which I've already covered and you need not, okay, so I didn't estimate कि ये पहली स्लाइड में इतना कुछ हो जाएगा, ठीक है? तो
You wanted engagement.
अब ज़्यादा कर लिया आप लोगों ने कुछ, ठीक है? वो मुझे बोल रहे जल्दी कर बोले जा रहे पीछे में, कितना जल्दी कर दूँगा? नहीं वो इसको अभी वो ONDC गए हैं, वो शिरीष जोशी पीछे पड़ जाएंगे, हमारे इनको टाइम मौका दे दे थोड़ा सा.
So, sir, I agree with Harsh, sir. I think the framework talks about infrastructure, while sir's question is more on adoption. So, can we say a 4G network geography will have a better digital adoption or digitization than a 2G? So, even if you have a better 4G,
Not
2G,
necessarily so.
access to electricity,
Yes.
farmland, crop data, because on the ground we see, as sir rightly pointed out, right, with all the same things, I think age of the farmer, education level, right? Adoption of other digital tools can be taken as a proxy that how likely they are to adopt a digital
Sincere
initiative.
apologies, Sanjeev, मैंने गलत छेड़ दिया.
अच्छा छेड़ा है आपने.
We'll talk about it later. I think his momentum is lost.
ये रिसर्च वाले सर ये गूगल हमको छोड़ेंगे नहीं, मौका देना पड़ेगा मुझे. ठीक है, बताइए. Yes, Sheen. Sheen is a researcher. She is the one who.
Hi everyone, I'm Sheen Zuchi. I'm a research manager at Institute for Competitiveness. We drive a lot of work with Government of India, NITI Aayog, Economic Advisory Council, to Prime Ministers and various departments. And what we specialize is effectively at measuring and ranking the Indian states and districts. So there are 3, 4, 5 points that I'll just like to shed light, and then we'll get to the framework. So one, why we are doing this framework, or why we wanted to, we were on board with the whole idea was, when you look at the agriculture productivity, agriculture contributes 18% of the GDP of India, and then now we have 42, the increase in employment for agriculture has increased to 42% again. And we, as a country, we still struggle with some productivity issues in terms of crops, and a lot of new things have changed. We have moved to organic farming and everything else. But when you talk about the, when you look at the land fragmentation in India, 85% of them are small marginal farmers. So what happens is that you don't see the high level of productivity in the incomes that we see in the United States or say African countries, is simply because we have small farmers. So small, how do you, and that one of the parameters that we, I'll talk detail in about, why in fact digitizing one of the parameters can change the trajectory of.
Very sweeping conclusions, ma'am.
Yeah, sir, I've not gotten to the framework. I'm so sorry. I will take up your question, sir.
Number of documents available which say small farmer is more efficient, more productive than the bigger farmer.
And our productivity is actually much better than most of these countries when you look at it by number of days.
Anyway, I'm not getting into that, sir, because she came and said something. That's why.
We understand agriculture more than the institute, but the institute understands how to build a framework. So let's go on.
When we look at enhancing the productivity of crops and the agriculture ecosystem in the country, there is no stat in the world that points towards that Indian farmers are more productive. And I'm citing World Bank, I'm citing FAO, and I'm citing NABARD, so which we closely work with. So there is no way. That is why digitization is not the answer to raising the productivity of the Indian agriculture, but it is a catalyst. Like Aadhaar and the UPI movement, how it started as a catalyst for changing the digitization. But again, India has now mobile penetration, but it does not have smartphone penetration. That is what exactly we capture here, that we want to say that how many farmers have smartphones to begin with. We are not saying that let's measure something like, okay, how much farmers are connected with internet. All the farmers are connected with internet due to geophone, but they do not have smartphone, and they do not capture it. That is why one of the parameters that becomes essentially, there is much more detail that will go into the framework, but essentially what we are saying that all of these parameters exist at the state and district level currently when we look at from the policy point of view, and agriculture being a state subject becomes exceedingly important for all the states how they implement this. So the use case that will depend a lot is directly proportional to how state governments look at it, how the ecosystem looks at. So some state like Karnataka is already advanced in the digitization of the ecosystems. Like someone pointed out that there is a possibility that where the 4G connectivity or 5G connectivity is high, are they more likely to adopt that faster? Yes, that is the evidence. That is the evidence, and that is what is captured in the parameters as well. So when we look at these.
What we can do is we can switch to the next slide. Just switch, so that people understand that this is the same framework. I'll just put it differently. So against farm and farmer, we talked about 2 pillars. Now we've got various specific indicators there. Okay. Now indicators is what inputs are coming and we are changing and modifying it. You could perhaps click on this crop data. Click on anything. for that matter, yeah.
So any of these parameters do not exist at this point. They're not
Yeah,
digitized.
so just as I wanted to say that, this is how it flows, this is the dimension, this is the pillar, and then you're picking up few indicators. Now, some people really fought about this. They're saying, इसमें zero मिलेगा, but देना जरूर है, because at the end of the day, we need tenanted farmers का lease record. नहीं है तो नहीं है, but we want people to push on that. So people said, okay, fine, we'll put it up, because it makes a difference how the direct
growing
benefit.
segment. You are
Anji?
very well. It's a growing segment.
It's a growing segment.
We have more tan farmers now. Numbers are increasing.
No, but we don't have any record.
That's a good thing. That's
Ah,
a good thing.
so-
Actually, NABARD has phenomenal data on tenanted farmers. Latest report NAPIS has.
सर मुझे ना रिपोर्ट नहीं चाहिए, मैं तो सिर्फ जाके नेट से उठा लूँगा सर.
No, but they kept data right from wherever it is.
Okay,
They have
fair
it
enough.
more data.
So, basically, I'm just telling people that this is how the entire format flows. At the end of the day, this is what I'm going to measure. डिजिटल फार्मर रजिस्ट्री है कि नहीं है भाई, ठीक है. नंबर 2, कितना कवरेज है, डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स, विलेजेस, किस लेवल तक जाती है. थर्ड इज इट ओपन सोर्स एंड पब्लिकली अवेलेबल. वेरी सिंपल क्वेश्चन दे आस्किंग, बेसिक क्वेश्चन दे आस्किंग. Alright?
I think the work done is phenomenal. You know, nobody would have done this kind of granular parameterization of all the things which will determine.
Good
That's
governance.
great.
So for each parameter, the indicators are not concluded basis on what is required to be digitized. Actually, the literature for 50 plus countries was looked at where the digitization pace has been, and we closely worked with World Bank also in understanding their report that the digitization index, there the parameters, even someone raised the question for social and the human capital perspective. I think what framework that we are trying to establish or what we are discussing as a 1.0 is simply we are saying that can digitizing these parameters actually improve the lives of farmers and the productivity of the states. That is the eventual goal. And these parameters, when we have looked at globally, they have shown immense promise. So this is our hypothesis. We can be wrong. There is a possibility when you take it to ground, we see some mixed results. But those results, this hypothesis is based on the success that we see in Africa, the success we see in US. It's not in Latin American countries. So these are our hypothesis testing that even if we are able to digitize one or the two parameters, how does it change the trajectory for? I don't know how many people are aware about this, but at the G20 forum, the DPI structure of India was adopted by African countries, and a lot of countries are moving towards seeking lessons from India on how to move on digitizing the parameters, especially the DPI infrastructure.
See, what we can do is, I will run through some of it, because people are looking at it slightly incomplete. Let's finish the picture. I'll get into the research part. Just carry on. Just carry on. Yeah. So, since it is all research led, so we thought we'll tell you that all this is there. There's a rationale for each pillar. Why did we put it under this? So we worked that out. So all that thing would be available to you people. Just carry on fast please with this. Yeah, through this. Yeah, next. Carry on. I don't need to. So we also then said, having put this down, we put a framework. Then we said, yeah, state में कुछ होता है कि नहीं होता, जाके check कर लें. Then we went back and changed the parameters. So we're doing this research and going back. So for example, let's look at some Indian states. Carry on. Lost it. Okay, next. So farmer and farm, farmer and land details. So we went to these 5 states. What are these states doing? This is just a very, very broad summary, but we've gone into detail. What does fruits do? Does it really give us that level of granularity which we are looking at? Is it digitized? Is it readily available to me? So we've gone through and done study on 5 states, looked at their documentation, spoken to people there, and have been able to build the framework basis this feedback that we received. Okay, carry on. Yeah. Come back. And carry on. So basically, on all the parameters, you will find that there is work done on state and their initiatives, and basis this, we should be able to then modify the framework partly. Carry on. Okay. Then there's a research behind the framework. This is what the Institute for Competitiveness did. So we have, going forward, we have all these documents ready for us. We've done work on which indicators matter. You may see only X number of indicators. We had hundreds of indicators. Which indicators to take forward? How do we do a qualitative and a quantitative analysis of that? We've done that. What is the digitization in agriculture global perspective? We've done some study at a global level, and then design framework and framework fundamentals. Just to give you some very quick insights. Now, crop data, for example. So for each of these pillars, we've gone through the literature. बनवाला साहब, डॉक्टर साहब, मतलब आप बोलोगे तुमने काम किया कि नहीं किया, तो ये हमने थोड़ा बहुत काम किया है. So there are people who've gone. Is there some relevance across the world for that indicator? Are we picking up the right one or not? There is enough research. I've got about 100 slides on this itself, in case someone is keen to understand this. So we have tried to back it with data. That's what Dr. Amit Kapoor was very particular about. It should be backed with research. It is backed with research. Something is not backed with research, we have dropped that indicator. You can get back. Go ahead, go to this. Next. Run through it, fast. Okay, so all this done, we do our research, we do the measurement of this. This is what you will see as an overall, this is a hypothetical snapshot. I've just taken Karnataka as an example. These are not necessarily the scores that we'll allocate, but this is how it looked like. Overall, much like you saw in the state of states, we'll give a ranking for states. For example, small states, large states, union territories, you'll find what is our score and ranking. Much like what you get college ranking, etc., we'll give the ranking for each state. Where does each state lie? Then we'll get into details of Karnataka. Now, in the report, this is how you will see it. Karnataka score of AgDx score is 69.6, and against the 6 dimensions, this is what the scores are. These are all hypothetical, don't take it. It's just to give you some idea as to what it will look like, what are the comments. And then the next question is, what further detail will we get into? All the 6 pillars that we have, all the 6 dimensions, against that all the indicators we have put down. Each indicator, what is the score there? At the end of the day, this is what we expect the government to pick up and say, hey, this state is doing well here. Is there something that I can pick up from there? So this is where all these startups would say, hey, I want to go to a state where there's a richness of a particular data. I work on soil. So where can I go? So perhaps this will guide them. A foundation may say, I want to go to the state which is worst or which is the lowest as far as environmental monitoring and precision agriculture is concerned. So they can pick up this thing from the report and say, this is where I want to invest. So this report can aid you to do that. State governments themselves will use it to move forward. That's a big hypothesis that we have. And we've spoken to several people and they said, yes, please go ahead. It will definitely catalyze the entire thing.
Is there a weightage given to any of the parameters?
Some weightage आएगा. That is why the research people are there. Weightages would be there. I have just given a very simple average here. I've just done an arithmetical average here. And it is not, so there would be methodologies by which they will give it. So I don't understand those methodologies, but they would be there.
See, the thing is, the fundamental paradox is there is an asymmetric relationship between the center and the states. Right? So I think how that asymmetry is, like certain states, for their agriculture investments, center spends more, right? And while getting lesser return, right? And there is also externalities that happen. So how that asymmetry gets reflected in the data is the question.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So we understand the dynamics between the center and the state, and we do understand that there will be several initiatives at the center which may not be adopted by the state, especially if it is not aligned. We all understand that. But at the end of the day, I'm saying I am not aligned to all this. I am going to go measure the
No,
state.
I'm not saying it from a political angle. I'm saying there are, even if you look at data wise, right? There are, when you look at data in terms of how much center is spending for the state, right? And for a particular, let's say for a subsidy there is a data that shows an asymmetry that place, right? And so, and we ideally with government, with agriculture being a state subject where the land and agriculture departments belong to the state. So how that asymmetry in the data will play out is the question here.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I think that is something once this version 1 gets stabilized will have to be seen and calibrated. It would be difficult to bring that element.
It's an ongoing, yeah.
We may also have a situation Karnataka versus West Bengal. Both are not aligned. But the ecosystem in Karnataka, independent of center's help, is very different vis-a-vis ecosystem in West Bengal. So those elements will probably in due course get calibrated.
And the institutions.
Yeah. So, Ram Dhulipala, would you have any comments
Yes.
on the various aspects being raised out here?
No, I'm also trying to observe. Firstly, good morning. I'm actually dialing in from Dakar, Senegal. As we remember, I think Parmesh mentioned it's one of those 4 countries in Africa where he senses a lot of action. But yeah, thanks a lot for this feedback, and I think most of the points are valid. I think somebody mentioned about data having very different levels of maturity in different states. That's absolutely correct. Even if there are some central government supported investments towards digitalization, even the states also need to have the necessary requisite policies, enabling policies, or the infrastructure, the social and institutional infrastructure to make maximum use of that central government schemes as well, right? And I do think some of the dimensions in this index sort of reflect that levels of readiness, or that levels of ability to catalyze those investments as well. That's all I can react, Sanjeevji, from what I'm just hearing.
So, this is, yes please, yes Sanjay.
Oh, you're going to cover point number 6 or it's already done?
Point number 6 I'm going to cover right now.
We started off saying the first chart says small farmer centric AgDx, right? And all the use cases I see, none of that is small farmer centric. When we say small farmer centric, here's the point I'm trying to make. There's 3 data points I'll share with you. 1792, that's per month income of a marginal and small farmer with less than 1 acre of farm. 4,476 is income of every single farmer, average income of every single farmer. And the potential from 1 acre of farm, I do farming, potential of 1 acre of farm is 75 lakh rupees per annum of revenue with 35 lakh rupees of income, net income. Now the number which we are talking about, 1792 and 35 lakh net income, where is this AgDx going to really bridge the gap? Not every farmer is going to get to 35 lakhs of net income, but every farmer cannot be at 1792. This whole point, the discussion about doubling farmer income is crap, because I see 1 acre of farm, 3 crops is able to get farmers with the right technology, with the right scientific practices, can get the farmer 5 to 6 lakh of net income from 1 acre. General stuff, no floriculture, no nothing. I don't see a use case for the small farmers. What is this, all these policies, what you're talking about, all these AgDx, what we are talking about, how does it help the small farmer to increase his income not by 2x, increase his income by 10x, 20x essentially, which is the potential which needs to get realized. 1792 is?
Less than 1 acre of farmer, average, just read NAFIS, is one of the best documents, data available in the country right now. Per month. So I would like to see a use case for small farmers. How do you really use AgDx for small farmers? Yes, Hemant.
Okay. No, first of all, compliments to you, Nipun, and the entire team for thinking about it. No one thought about it. So first and foremost, my suggestion: get started.
Yeah.
There's no end to it in terms of the intellectual inputs that will keep coming from people like me and others. But I don't think, in the pursuit of perfection, we'll lose the momentum. So, good, bad, ugly, dirty, whatever it is, get started. June 2025, is that a good timeline?
No, April.
April, yeah. So publish it. There'll be hundreds of guys who'll stand up and say bullshit, but I think it's important to get it going. I'm sure we can improve upon it. I think second point that I want to mention, of course, you are stacking one state versus other in some ways,
yes,
in a positive way.
But how do you build mechanism that one state can learn from another state?
Yes.
Right? Like, I think some of you know the crop stack that we built in UP. To me, is a low-hanging fruit. Pradeep is sitting here, and the first startup built it at a fraction of a sort of a very small amount of money, and it's a simple thing which any state can do. I'm sure what Karnataka built or what other state built, AgDx from Telangana. How do you build those mechanisms where states talk to each other? I think that is extremely important for the success of this index. Right? I think third thing which Bhanwala sir mentioned in terms of the demand side, the adoption, the digital adoption by farmers, I think that's where probably you need to think a bit more creative. It's frankly hard to measure.
Pseudo indicator.
Yeah, but I think one pseudo indicator for me are 4 platforms that have done a big service for farmers in India: YouTube, WhatsApp, Facebook, Insta, in this order. I think if we can involve big tech to get some data points in terms of the number of searches, number of, I don't know, there are.
Pseudo indicator, we can think of that.
But yeah, that is a great indicator to me, because the amount of usage which the amount of time farm is spending on social media for occupational purpose is mind blowing.
Yes.
And the last point I mentioned is in terms of the parameters. I think they're all great and we can always improve upon it. But I think one thing which I see, the delta on these parameters, let's say internet connectivity, broadband connectivity, implementation of Agri stack, open sourcing of Agri stack, I think over 5 to 7 years, the delta between states is going to go down. It will become a standard hygiene factor of sorts.
Okay.
Right? So that delta will kind of get, my guess is 2030 to 2035, you'll see very little delta on those parameters. So what are the other parameters which should then come into play to make it?
So as I said, this will have to evolve as we go ahead. Have we thought through every single version? We have not. And to respond to what Sanjay Vidyarthi said, my expectation of digitalization is not that I will straight away expect the farmer to use it and say do it, but the whole ecosystem is enabling it and things are being ready. If I didn't have UPI Aadhaar, you could have always questioned me, "Tum use nahi karte ya nahi?" Someone has provided it, now I'm riding that wave. So my idea is that someone will eventually ride the wave.
I'll just add a quick point. First of all, when we looked at the parameters and the indicators, the first question, for each one of them, the question was, will this in some manner impact a small farmer? Will not be direct. It will have to go through a government, it will have to go through a startup, it will have to go through somebody. But if that parameter or that indicator was available and somebody focused on it and took that just one indicator and did a ranking of all the states, then would it have an impact, etc.? That is the question that we went through. Second, I love what Hemendra said, get started. These things take time to evolve. You'll always have, today we're starting off with 6 dimensions, tomorrow you might have 10 dimensions. That's okay. So things will evolve. Today there are about 40, 50 indicators, there'll be 200 indicators down the line, but let's get started. So this will evolve. And one last point, we will come to it when Venki comes on and talks about envisioning the future, is the principles and the approach. So if we can agree to the principles behind the framework, and if we align to the principles, then it will allow each one of us to contribute to the index and the framework in a different manner. Pradeep could pick up a part of it that relates to geospatial data, and maybe that's a sub component that evolves from there, as long as we align to the principles. And one of the approaches, very clearly back to Himendra's point, is action oriented. So can somebody pick up the framework and say, now what next? How do I help this state or this district do something that will take it forward?
Yeah, okay. So people are asking me about the use cases. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you.
Then you go ahead, ma'am.
You go ahead.
So, firstly, it's a great framework. Compliments on that. Pretty comprehensive, and it's a great start. One thing which I just wanted to bring to the table is all of this, and it's a bit of a downer, little bit, but very important point. All of this is going to be governed eventually by the DPDP Act, which is coming out, right? I mean, it's the act is out, but it's going to be enforced soon by the government. And given that agriculture is a sensitive sector, and especially farmers are a very sensitive subject in this country, I would, my one suggestion would be to have maybe some indicators which are tracking consent frameworks at a state level, redressal mechanisms, because anything going wrong with the use of a farmer data can bring down
This has been
the whole
highlighted
sector.
on privacy,
Yes.
security, has been
So
highlighted
you
by
have policy as an indicator, which is great, but having a policy is not good enough.
I agree.
Is how much of it
Yes.
is being implemented and how. So I think something to that effect. I think as of now, hardly that data exists at a state level, but I think we have to start preparing for that, because that's the thing which is going to, you know, and that happened in the initial days of Aadhaar and UPI. You know, there were all these cases which we read in the news that someone's Aadhaar was misused. So some of these issues will come up whether we like it or not in this sector, and states will have to respond to it. And putting that information out there is also good competitive competition for states, right? That acha ye state mein ye kar rahe hain for consent for redressal.
Ishita,
So
absolutely
that's just
right.
a point I
No,
wanted to.
absolutely right. We should measure the readiness of the states on consent frameworks and the implementation of the states at the of consent frameworks at the state level. We should measure that as an indicator within the framework. However, the AgDx itself doesn't use any data. So the AgDx itself uses
picking up public data,
publicly available
and sharing
information. There is no sensitive data that flows into AgDx.
I agree. I'm not saying it's.
But the different. I just wanted to highlight the differentiation.
Yeah. One
I'm
last.
saying that the sector needs this.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a very important point which is going to come up in this sector. Yes, I agree. That's the point. So if
I
you
think,
measure it, it's
Yeah,
great.
one point. I think it's a great. First of all, you guys have taken up an audacious task, right? Because for people who work in this industry, we feel that Indian agriculture is a unique beast, which defies a lot of norms, a lot of things that we see in the global. And that's where a lot of people get very argumentative when we talk about, when we compare global standards, say this is how India should also ought to be. Because it's a very, India is in a place in a unique predicament where modern technologies are proceeding with feudal cultures. Right? So we are a very interesting mix of things. That said, one small point I want to make from a suggestion wise, like, you know, today, which ties into what Banwala Saab's point, right? Like states have had different human capital, and we have had a history of various policies, and some policies have worked, some policies have not worked. One of the biggest pain points that I've seen in this industry is we generally don't document policy failures. So many times we don't have that data. So even if we're going to get to say that some, like what Banwala Saab was talking about, that some states have progressed further, documenting policy failures in some way which can complement. Like if we say Karnataka is lagging behind this, we can then, if I were to double click it, I would ideally love to see ABCD policies were implemented and success was measured only in for the first 4-3. You know, the top 3.
That is, if that data is available. I am just making a framework, collecting data from public sources.
Yeah. I'm just saying we
then
could add to that.
presenting. Now,
Yeah.
how people use that data, I do not know. But I have some people out here, Mukul from Agrim, right? He picked up a lot of money from the market. That's why I called him today. Okay, so he needs to tell me whether such data is available. Would they be able to leverage it, use it? Would it help them in any way, or is not going to help them? And I would like some responses from all the people who picked up money in this room. There are several of them. There is Mehtab, there is Grokam, there is Shobit, lots of people. So tell me, in your journeys, respective journeys, what have you gone through, and would you feel it is relevant? So over to you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Aparna. Nice to have you here.
Before I jump into the use cases, I will add one more thing. On the pillar side, we are talking about small farmers like very deeply. In the pillar, what I understood in 4.5 year execution of Agrim is we often miss out on the key supply chain participants, those who are there. So anyone, a small shop which is helping farmer buy the right agri inputs, any small Aradhya who is buying back agri outputs from the farmer, right? A state which has been able to implement a strong infrastructure of the supply chain in the country, in the state, often tends to do better, right? So in the pillar, right, measuring how a state is doing on the supply chain aspect, which is actually helping small farmer on the ground, is very critical. So that would be my input, and I can share more information around that. Right?
Sure.
So because we have seen that in Assam, right? In Assam, we reach out to our retailers, small retail outlets through digital channels. You won't believe Assam is the least penetrated market from agri inputs distribution standpoint, and the amount of response which we are seeing is humongous, right? So that state is doing better than Odisha now.
So if some of this data was available to you and everything was ready at a click, would it help you move forward? Would it save some resources? Would it help the end person faster? Would you be more agile? Is the question which I want several of you to respond.
Yeah, I'll quickly answer that, right? So before we design any go-to-market strategy, right, our majority, like 3 to 4 months time goes around building the right data, right? Building the right strategy, what portfolio of products should be built on the platform from an e-commerce standpoint. I guess that entire exercise, the data is not structured, so we have to get the data from multiple sources, parts and parcel, and then collate that and basis some proxies, right? We have to come up with a strategy. And what we see sometimes, because when the data is good quality, we end up doing better, right? If the data is bad quality, we end up investing that dollar and we do not get that return. And effectively, if that dollar would have been used in the right fashion, we would have gotten better returns, that would have done better things for the end customer. So data, we are sorry to say this, in agriculture in India, we are super data dark, right? Right from agri inputs to agri outputs. We do not measure anything. We do not have effective data on any parameter. Like we have broken data. There have been cases where one department is reporting something and another department is reporting something. The central department is saying something and the state department is saying something. It's absolutely mess.
Okay, great.
Right. So this is
thanks.
This is really.
Yeah, I'd like to give limited time. So Shrikant, welcome. So Shrikant Shastri is the chairman of the GDPDC. So he's here. So anyone wanting to understand geospatial, the reason why I wanted you here was so that you could support this.
Put me in a spot.
No, I'm not putting you in a spot. Yes.
First of all, great work. And by the way, my name is Apurva. I work for Council on Energy, Environment and Water. We are a policy research think tank based out of Delhi. Very glad, because I'm come from research institute. Very thrilled to see the kind of research that has been done, and it's a very complicated framework. Congratulations on attempting it, and we should definitely put it out. That's the recommendation. Just in two ways we can look at this. One is, okay, what's missing, but now, okay, how do we build upon this?
So you as a research organization, what would you do with if something is available?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just in terms of building on this, in terms of use cases, I think what we are trying to enable is, if this data is available, to whom this data will provide agency. And so that they can clearly see a business opportunity or a community opportunity and come in and launch their efforts. So when we talk about farmers, then we need to think backwards. What are the institutions who work with farmers, and is this Indus able to help all those kind of institutions or not? So startups one, government another.
FPOs is there.
FPOs is there. Another one is these local institutions that work with indigenous methods, indigenous technologies, local institutions, and that's where I think the ask was also coming, that what about the social capital captured or not. So I think just keeping, so the way to address the smallholder would be, can we think of that institution, those CSOs that launch these products or services, can they benefit from this?
Okay.
I think they can benefit from this. They might have to just use another indicated index together with this. Meaning, I mean,
So Purva, I'm confessing that we've not thought through everything. So there could be several nuances which we may need to add as we go along.
You may not need to. I'm saying that this index may be used with another index in conjunction, and not everything needs to be solved by this index.
Sure.
So that's one. So therefore, looking at coherent use with other indices can also be a way out.
As long as you can define the connectors.
Connectors, exactly. Yeah. So, for example, I would imagine any startup would think of ease of business in a state and this index together. They would want to ensure that data is available. Also, ease of business is there. So they're going to use two indices, and I can imagine multiple indices coming together and used by the users. Second point, just in terms of the purpose that we are solving for, these agents coming and solving for maybe the performance of agriculture or yields for the farmers. The other outcome to think of is resilience. Would these startups be able to use this data and come up with ideas or identify target regions that solve for resilience of the farmers? But that may use then a bit of different kind of indicator set.
So my counter to that is, would you have imagined all the innovation that is happening with UPI Aadhaar? If I had started UPI Aadhaar thinking कि इससे मैं क्या क्या कर सकूँगा तभी मैं करूँगा? No, you said you want to create a layer. Now you innovate on it. Zero Aadhaar wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, no, I'm building on that. So I'm not saying that this has to happen now, but as you think of the N.0 or any other institution and like ours also, how do we solve and how do we add to this in terms of solving for not just yields or the incomes, but also the stability of income, therefore resilience, which will then require different sort of indicators.
We have another initiative which we have is called the Sandbox, Agri Sandbox, where we're saying we will create these sort of centers of excellence in a few pockets where we can experiment with all these things and say, if everything is digitized, will we be able to leverage it and allow people to then play in that sandbox?
Indeed. I think that sandbox that allows this sort of interlinkages would be a great complementary effort as we launch this.
Okay. So I'm going to run through because I'm finishing my time.
I wanted to just.
I think you switched it suddenly to this.
Okay. You said there's nothing after that.
Oh, there are some slides.
Okay, we switch it back.
Yeah.
But just to answer that point, that's why we wrote some of the words here, and please help to wordsmith it as well as we go forward. Our intention was, to make sure that the framework assesses the penetration, the maturity, and the impact that digitalization of agricultural practices, products, and processes is causing, right? But please add to it in such a manner that as we go forward, we have to define the connectors, we have to define the principles around the framework so that other complementary frameworks can leverage it, can work around it.
I've got only a few slides left.
Go back.
And so people did ask me once I did what is missing. So I just made a simple list of what is missing. So you can just show up that particular slide. Yeah, what does the future of AgDx look like? No, that's okay. That's okay. We can take our time. Not to worry. Yeah, it's okay. Okay. Sorry, folks. Okay, just carry on. Yeah, just carry on. Yeah. So definitely, when we work with CGIR, they're saying we have ILRI, where is livestock? So we have a plan for that. We're working with them right now. So what could be the various dimensions, pillars to be added? We're putting that down. It's an important element to put down, right? Then we are saying, go to the next slide, please. FPOs could come as a dimension, right? So institutions which you are saying would come as dimension and pillars. So we will spend the next 1 month or so trying to assemble this. Then future pillars could be labor and workforce data. That is missing right now, people said. There could be gender and social inclusion. All these are missing, and whether this data is available. So we have put down this list of about 5-10 things, but more will get added to this list of things which are currently missing. But is my attempt to make it perfect? No, not at all. Right? Am I going to go ahead? Yes, I'm going to go ahead. Right? Or we're going to go ahead. Carry on to the next slide. Next one. Yeah, so this is our plan. We will incorporate inputs that we received and freeze measurements across all indicators in December. By Jan 25, we intend writing to all state governments. Hey folks, we're going to go ahead with this. If your data is available on the thing, we'll take it, otherwise you get a 0 on that. Alright? and we'll do the measurement and evaluation of all states by Feb, March, etc., and then we launch the scorecard. That's the rough plan that we have. So I've had several naysayers on this in my journey. So I'm not getting dissuaded. So we will carry on, and there would be lots of wins that one have to work here, but I'm pretty much okay. We're non-compete, not for profit. I'm not getting any funding for this. I'm pretty much okay with it. All right? I don't have to report to anyone. Right? I don't have a VC like Ashish Kedan chasing me. Or, okay, you cool. Right? Or all others chasing me. No one is chasing me. So I'm pretty much comfortable.
Can I say something?
Let me just finish off the last slide.
Sure.
Yes, I'm done with the last slide. Okay? But you said briefly. No.
Yes, very
okay.
briefly. So this is no question about it. What you're doing, Sanjeev, is absolutely necessary, right? I mean, I'm a technologist, so yes, digital infrastructure is definitely necessary. The only feedback I have, I've been working with small farmers now for 7 years, literally with hands
Yes,
on.
you are.
Right?
Yeah, we recognize that.
There's 6 things which I see. If we help the small farmer, we just succeed like anything. First is access to credit. Second is technology adoption for productivity improvement. Third is scaling in scientific farming practices. Fourth is supply chain management, which is completely unorganized and completely broken. Fifth is unexploitative market access, not exploitative, input and output, which gives you 5%, 6% margin. And the seventh is crop planning based on soil and climate and what is really needed as far as supply and demand equation is concerned. If you help the farmers, right? I mean, when we talk about farmer centricity, think from what their farmer needs. We have put everything else, what a startup needs, what the government needs, what the foundations need, what the World Bank needs, but what exactly is the farmer needing to really be successful? I think if we make that as the central stuff and put those parameters, I sit in a lot of government meetings. We really don't have a clue what the farmer needs.
Sanjay, that's why we called you here. So come, stay back, stay back.
No.
That's it.
All right. I have
one. Okay.
I think it is important for you as the Agri Collaboratory to look at this. See, I saw a timeline and the timeline ended. The timeline shouldn't end. See, you need to build 2 things. You need to build a very strong feedback mechanism so that you are able to constantly improve the indices. Like you kind of be open to dropping some of these parameters, be open to introducing new ones. And as time progresses, you will start seeing that everyone is doing well on some indicators, just drop those and introduce new ones because things will evolve, right? So make it a live index, make it something very dynamic, make it self-correcting. That's one. Second is when you are looking at data sets also, and again, I'm sure that you will do the research behind it, but be very cognizant about not using indicators which might actually be guiding certain other behaviors, right? So, just abhi baat ho rahi thi, is 4G connectivity available over there? Is that driving usage? Or is it the fact that there were people who are willing to use 4G and that is what is basically brought in the telecom companies to set up 4G connections over there? So there will be some kind of so some of these indicators might show you false positives and some of these indicators will show you false negatives. Be very conscious about choosing those. But more importantly, be open to changing, make it a live thing, figure out what that structure is going to be. I can't, but you will need to make it a very live.
This was meant to enroll all of you to ask for help and open it up so that we can have a dialogue not between 5, 6, 7 people. 5, 6, 7 people, but between a larger audience. We'd like you to write back and say, look, you like to work on it, you like to collaborate, you like to help. And there are so many aspects to consider. Governance of the framework itself is a huge, huge, deep subject. How do you govern something which is in an open framework, right? How do you make sure that it doesn't become partisan, even willy-nilly? We might have the best of intentions, but we might go in the wrong direction. And then what indicators, how do you do that?
So yesterday I was in the inauguration where Srikanth was launching one pilot for Dronagiri. So I was watching it very carefully and I said, how does he launch it? So obviously he has big government support the Department of Science and Technology, so he had fancy posters and all. So I was telling him, how do we launch it? हमारे पास कुछ है ही नहीं है, इतने बढ़िया बढ़िया पोस्टर बनाए श्रीकांत ने, तो हम होटल वाले हैं, तो हम केक लेके आए भाई साहब, केक काट के हम करेंगे, और हमारे यहाँ 3 लोग हैं जिनको मैं बुलाऊंगा, बनवाला साहब आप आइए, हेमेंद्र माथुर जी आप आइए, सुनील खैरनार जी आप आइए, प्लीज़ आप आइए, प्लीज़ आइए, प्लीज़ एक महिला को बुला लेते हैं, अपर्णा आप आइए, आप लास्ट में आइए, यू नॉट स्पोकन अ वर्ड, सो यू हैव टू पार्टिसिपेट इन दिस, कम प्लीज.
But this is truly a jointly cut cake. So let's do it right.
Yes, उधर बीच में ले जाओ. तो सब पूछे लॉन्च कैसे करना है, मैं भी yesterday श्रीकांत was watching it carefully, लॉन्च होता क्या है? So I couldn't pick up anything which I could do repeat in the space of 24 hours. I didn't have the money, power and the backing of huge infrastructure. So the only thing I did was rang up the hotel कि यार केक बना दो. अरे वाह, आप तो बिल्कुल अच्छी मीठी बात बोल दी आपने तो. Come folks, come Aparna, come. आप आइए देखो, ठीक है, इसमें ना बाल सेक्शन वाला बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है. हटा दो कुछ नहीं.
How long is the internship?
Both of you.
अभी कोई Q&A वगैरह कुछ होना है अभी आप उसको आप सर
So over to you. Last bit to the envisioning part.
I have the arduous task of keeping the cake in front of me and not letting you all eat it. So, ले जाइए better. वरना ध्यान इधर ही आएगा.
We are on time. We will break at about 1:45.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, I'm the last person between you and your lunch, so but I'll really make it engaging because the point of bringing all of you here was to make sure that we all have a dialogue. Samvad ho jaye. That's the whole idea here. So I want to, I come from I'll just introduce myself very briefly. My name is Venki Ramachandran. I run a company called Agri Business Matters. At Agri Business Matters, I tend to play a lot of things a little informally. So I would like to take your permissions for being a little more irreverent and informal here because that's how I like to really do things. And I also firmly believe that today, if we want to envision the future, it comes only with play. Right? Today, I believe that the future of work is indistinguishable from play. So that's with that intent, I want to sort of give you some bit of provocative teasers that could sort of help us envision what this activity would really look like, right? If we were to take AgDx and take it to the future, what would it all look like? So, this is what happens with AgDx and the technology, right? We have to deal with the technology that is uncertain, that will take its own sweet time. So it is a long haul that way. बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
इसका ऑफ क्यों हो गया?
आ जाएगा. Everything in agriculture takes time.
Yeah, and this whatever we say is fast in agriculture is counted in years, not in months or weeks.
इसको ऑन ऑफ करके देखो.
So when I said informal, this is what I really meant. Sort of full screen. Yeah. So actually, if you really look at what happens, I really wanted to present the points in a slightly informal way so that we all have a dialogue. If you really look at the history of what happened in the farm laws, right? We largely saw this actually happen. ये कहाँ गया? हाँ ये भी होता है agriculture में वैसे. Yeah, we largely saw this is what happened, right? Center passed the farm laws, and then every state updated its own laws, and that's when it led to a certain level of logjam, and at some point we had to repeal the farm laws, right? So there was not adequate consultation, and so this problem is always existing because fundamentally we are dealing with a paradox here, right? At one level we need a national agenda, but the power for land, the power owners also lies with the states, because state has, as Banwala Sahab was talking about, which is where the corporate, I saw his article he'd written on cooperative federalism, right? Today, the challenge will come in terms of bridging cooperative federalism with competitive federalism. So that is the task, and next slide.
We are stopping sharing it on Zoom.
Sure. So this part of, yeah. Sorry?
You're very incisive, you're writing.
Thank you.
That's why it gets cut very
It's there.
Yeah, great. So I wanted, at the risk of sort of preaching to the choir here, who really know much bit better, but I really want to delve down a little bit into aspect of this whole friction between the center and the state, right? Many times we all think that with data, especially, I come from a technology world. I naively believed that with technology, jadoo kar denge. And that's how I started my journey, leaving my tech job and got into agriculture. But then it's been 9 years, we realized that technology was sare problems solving us, because there's a very, very deep context and deep political aspect, that engine that is there, right? Now, if you really double click into this whole aspect of center and state, you have to understand that the agriculture, the state has a power over the agriculture and the land. Whereas if we see the center itself, there are multiple departments in it, right? The ones which are making the money, which is animal husbandry and fisheries, they are different departments. So we have to facilitate collaboration between the two. And if we really look at, there are multiple departments. We talk about, let's say, PM Kisan, then that will come from a Ministry of Rural Department. Whereas you talk about the food that goes out for the PDS, that's a different food and public distribution. Similarly, in 2021, we thought of including FPOs. Now there is a new department called Ministry of Cooperation that started in 2021, where the idea is to revive cooperatives. So we are not really very sure whether will cooperatives exist with FPOs, or will FPOs become a modern cooperatives. It's kind of becoming circular in many ways. The reason where we are bringing this up, I'm bringing this up as is like there are various problems, and if we have to really look at the AgDx, in a ways to take it to its really highest potential, we have to find ways of, somebody talked about consent, right? We have to find ways of bringing this consent and bringing the ways where we can let the states also, states interrogate with each other and dialogue with each other. And that's what we are seeing in the case of DPI world also, where even though we have invested in AgStack, there are very few states that are taking and a few states are not willing to take it. So how do we create that sort of mechanism is the point here. Last slide. The last slide is, in agriculture, this is again a meme I had created some time back. Agriculture is a very funny beast, especially in India, where there are certain constraints that the state poses, and there is also a certain version of the market that's there. And so we always have this hybrid beast. And if that were not the case, to deal with what the state misses out and what the market misses out, we have the entirely a non-profit sector here. So in a way, I really brought these 3 pointers. That's all I have for today. I really wanted this to sort of open up to see that if we were to take the AgDx forward, in what ways can we bridge between state and the market, and also the non-profits who are now, we were actually, Sanjeev was actually talking about for-profit and non-profit, right? Right now, we are coming into the world with DPI where the distinction is also very blurring between what is a for-profit and non-profit, because a non-profit of NPCI is actually in profit, whereas a for-profit PhonePe is in losses, right? So we are kind of in very interesting times. So I really wanted to throw these provocators to see in what ways can we actually take it forward. So in what ways do you think the relationship between the consensual relationship between the center and the state can actually be addressed. So we would love to sort of hear your thoughts and kind of take this, take this forward.
So unless there are thoughts, there is no lunch. So you told them, unless we hear some thoughts.
Because
then
I
when
have-
does the quiz come? When does the quiz come? Quiz? You still mugging?
वो तो खत्म हो गया.
I was doing side reading all this while and there is no quiz. You must be a damn good student, I must say.
So Venki, one quick remark on your previous slide. It's the state government which is Tom, the central government is Jerry. So I think state governs a lot of things when it comes to agriculture. So if you have to make this index going, you have to get the state governments on our side. That's all I want to say.
No, that's exactly where. How do we get the states also to adopt? In DPIs also we are trying this out, right? In Unified Agriculture Interface that I'm right now working with, we are trying out to see what we're doing in Nasik can be adopted in other states. So that's exactly the intent here. Yes.
So before, as you come in, I also want some people in the second row, which is the bad row, people like Shobit from VGrow and from Siddharth from Bharat Agri, also to perhaps contribute. And Samantha is looking down, but that won't stop you, and so is George. So there are some comments which I'm expecting from all of you.
तो टीचर बन रहे हैं अभी comments.
नहीं, वो सबसे सबने पैसा लिया भाई, सब जवाब देना होगा, ठीक है, जवाब देंगे सब.
So some of the indices are usually run by government. So for example, Smart City Mission, right? You remember that every state then jumped into it and started doing some activities around this funding and all. So the acceptability of to the similar level, this kind of indices, you think how much time it would take, and what would be the key important areas which the TAC, the Agri Collaboratory, has to work on for the acceptance of the state or the center to probably reach to the scale which we envision probably other similar frameworks have.
Yeah, I don't have all the answers there, but what we are trying out right now is in different states have put in initiatives. Like for instance, Orissa, right? I think somebody was talking about how it started off with Orissa. Orissa has deployed an entire team where they are actually starting to measure at a very granular level in terms of what areas, the village level, what infrastructure is. So some of the data we'll have to open source it, see how it can be used, and then create public goods. Creating public goods is an aspect that hasn't been much been addressed there. So yeah.
So let some people, let Mehta, let Prateek, we start with you, Shobit.
So hello everyone, this is Shobit from VGrow. Very quickly, we are the largest fruits company in India. Very small, but such a fragmented market that we are still large. I do not have exact answer for this, but I was wanting to comment on a very simple use case which we are actually struggling with. We become the largest banana exporter last quarter. Piyush Goyal had put in LinkedIn the growth, and actually we were the, I would say, 90% contributor for that. And when we saw that, hey, how can we scale? What can we do more? The idea is, let's see the Eurasian plate. Whilst India is the largest producer of banana, we have 4% of the trade. And who takes that share of Eurasia is Ecuador and Philippines. And when we saw how there are three options for us as a startup, right? What do? We either go and build something there, or we say, can India compete with them? And for that we need data. Like, what is the soil type? Where is more predictability in terms of wind velocity? Where is the ecosystem of cold storage? I don't want to go as a startup and put assets there, right? Where is more subsidy scheme, which government is supportive? So I think even the data point which I think they've put, I think it's a lot already for us, for a startup like us. And even the subsection of that will not just decide a lot of capital allocation, but change ecosystem. You have to think, right, tomorrow if today we're just 4% of the trade of banana in Eurasia, if we can compete with Ecuador, because the quality is different, so you need a different ecosystem which is soil and weather, you can actually become 20, 30, 40%. And that changes small farmers. Because we work with banana, it's only small farmers, fruits is only small farmers. So I think there's a lot of such examples, I have like zillion of them. But I'm just giving one small thing which is struggling today, and we don't have an answer. In fact, one of our team is traveling to Ecuador to evaluate Ecuador, where we will invest that. I think that's one example which I think this can
Thanks. So whilst Mehtab and Pradeep are fighting as to who, kisko diya jayega mic, so let Mehtab, since you have the mic right now.
The thing is that I don't know if I could comment on what
Sure, please.
Venki is asking us to kind of speak upon center and state. I agree that of course it's a state subject.
No, sir, I'm not asking to comment on the center and state. These are sort of pointers where these are pointers as to where
if AgDx could be taken to its logical conclusion, it could ideally become this bridge for achieving what the cooperative federalism could look like. So we are just connecting the dots further and extrapolating it, and we'd love to hear from you in what ways can we build the pathways here. So we've not come here that we know the answer, evaluate. We've come here with the agenda that we have built to, Lego में 2-3 blocks बनाए हैं, अभी और आगे आपको बनाना पड़ेगा, क्या क्या बना सकते हैं. That's what we are bringing.
Oh, just as an introduction, I'm Mehta, one of the founders at Farmart. We are a marketplace for agri commodities. Shobit is on the perishable side, we're on the non-perishable side. That's what differentiates us. Otherwise, mota same hai. I would just say that maybe we would be the best agents in the country to what I think so sir was saying कि ये किसानों के लिए बनाया है, छोटे किसानों के लिए बनाया है. I feel that organizations like us would be the best agents that could be the bridge between AgDx and that small farmer. So, I mean, that's just a simple point I have.
Yeah, just one thing maybe I would love to explore with Farmart in specifically here is, Farmart invests a lot into logistics. Right? For you, logistics is a very key enabler.
Yeah.
Right? And we have data from India that says ki logistics readiness there, right, across states. If that data can come in from say Farmart in some ways, or whichever can be made at the public good level, right? That could become a very good valuable asset to see, because each state, like today, the problem in getting the nice pineapple from Northeast is actually logistics. Right? We have the great quality, but the markets haven't been there because we've not got the good logistics. So maybe putting indices, I know we've talked about infrastructure, but I don't remember seeing logistics in that part as an element per se.
It features as a sub-element.
Okay. So maybe some element can be incorporated from.
No, I mean, again, this अच्छा point है logistics वाला, but we also break our heads on this part. I would say it's again एक input होगा that it is important to collaborate. When you're saying AgDx, important aspect is with the Ministry of maybe Roadways, because if you could digitize BLTs, if you could digitize कांटा पर्ची, धर्म कांटास, उसमें बहुत डेटा होता है, and that's a simple thing that जैसे अभी हमने बहुत पैरामीटर्स लिखे हैं.
ये अच्छी बात बोली.
हमने इतने पैरामीटर्स लिखे.
यार पूरे दिन में यही एक अच्छी बात है.
नहीं एक्चुअली जैसे अभी हम ना अराइवल्स देखते हैं मंडी में, एग मार्केट, वहाँ पे एक आदमी होता है पंच करने वाला. अब उसको नींद आ रही है, कुछ और डाल देगा, राइट, सिंपल एज दैट. बट इफ यू गो बैक, आई थिंक सो 2 स्टेट्स में APMC नहीं है, बिहार और केरला में, बाकी में तो है ही. यूपी में 9 आर 6 आर करता है, MP में अनुज्ञा करता है, पंजाब में J फॉर्म करता है या L फॉर्म करता है. So those data itself is, you're sitting in the flow of data. You don't need validation. जैसे GSTR के दिन में there was one question, right, कि कितने लोगों tenant farmers हैं. If you're asking that question to somebody, गलत data ही आएगा. You have to be in the flow of data. Is like मेरे
observability data.
Okay, great. So Ashish, तुमको मैंने शुरू से कुछ नहीं पूछा before Siddharth come. So Ashish and Sunil Kherna are some of the best people that I have interacted with in this area of agriculture. मैं आशीष से कुछ तो सुनना चाहूँगा. Ashish, can't let you go without a comment on this, because I really value what you and Sunil do.
And I also want to add a bit to what Sunilji also, right? I work with him in the project there, and every time I would say he's one of the Bhishma Pitamagas in this space, and every time we speak, we discover so many newer aspects there. So maybe we would love to hear your thoughts from both Ashish and Sunil.
सुनील जी नॉर्मली बोलते आशीष तुम तो कुछ बोलोगे, तो यही आशीष की गलत बात है, जो जिसने माइक पकड़ा था उसी को ले लेता है. Yes, please.
So how I'm looking at this is now that we've seen more than 1,000 startups now in this space. The gestation time in terms of scale, in terms of technology options, with something like this is going to reduce drastically. You asked me today, it takes about 15 years to build a company. Right, so that's going to get shorter and shorter, I think, in times to come, because the data will keep getting better and better, right? So 50-60% of the repetitive work will go, and eventually technology adoption is also going to increase. What we saw a decade back in agri-tech versus now, things only is getting better. One might argue in terms of the pace कि जल्दी हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है, but obviously we are getting there, right? So I think the ecosystem is getting better and better. Smarter people coming in, becoming entrepreneurs, that's happening. Technology adoption is happening. Road infrastructure, farm gate infrastructure is getting better compared to what it was a decade back.
So I do see that it is going in the positive direction, and something like this, authentic data or access to data for entrepreneurs like Shobit, everyone is saying, right, data is not available, right? So if they can just pick it up from there and build something on top of it, a lot of time will get saved. So, and obviously there'll be a lot of learnings on the way, and in terms of kya nahi karna hai for founders versus kya karna hai. Kya nahi karna, if you end up doing that, it'll take you 3 years to reach where you started off, right? So kya karna is an ever evolving process, all of us are learning in this journey. So I think that ways I see a great future for something meaningful to come out of this, where data lies in the center of everything, and obviously execution is the key, right? For anyone and everyone, easier to give gyan and knowledge, but at the end of the day, we want execution and what is coming in, right? That will determine everything.
Thanks, Ashish. Let's hear the Bhishma Pitama. अरे पहले उनको बोलने दिया प्रदीप, तुम्हारी बारी बाद में आएगी. सुनील पहले को समझे.
No, very kind words, Venki, and very grossly exaggerated. So, but there is a lot of kindness in this room, so I take it in the spirit of that. There is a lot of praise going around. I'm not going to talk specifically about the Tom and Jerry thing, but whatever little I have observed as an observer or as an ecosystem player in the last 24 years, I would like to summarize in 5 minutes and share with the people here, and not hold you from your lunch. When I started in 2000, the first institution which I co-founded is called Agri Watch. In that, 24 years ago, we were struggling with data, analytics, and exactly the kinds of things that we are discussing today. And we did our bit for the sector. We are a group which is like an ecosystem services group. So we support and enable other players, the B2B players who are operating in this system, including the startups. There is another institution which I co-founded called ISAP India Foundation, through which we work on an annual basis with almost 600,000 farming families across the country. And we support a lot of startups through ISAP India Foundation. I and Ashish have been involved in Indigram Labs Foundation from 2015-16. And we have the good fortune of having supported almost 70 odd startups with investments, and some of them have really done well. Going back to the work I do, the mentors that I've had from the beginning, one of them is Professor Anil Gupta from IIM Ahmedabad, and he had sent me in 1993 to work with tribal farmers in Devgarh, which is near Chittorgarh in Rajasthan. So that is where I worked on market linkages of Tendupatta leaf. So he was an inspiration, and even when I set up AgriWatch or ISAP, he was instrumental in helping me get the funding for ISAP India Foundation, for which he had introduced me to Dr. Nachiket Moore, the second mentor, I would say, in my life. A very great man. Not too many people would know him here, but he has facilitated the creation of multiple institutions, and both private sector, I think you would know him, being in Samunati, so he's the mentor of even Anil Kumar. And the third great mentor I had was Dr. Sharad Joshi. So I had the good fortune of spending, and this is what I mentioned in the UI meeting also at Bangalore. I have stopped attending events for the last 15 odd years. So I love Sanjeev Rangraj ji. So you can't turn down his request. So which is why I'm here. So Sharad Joshi was my third mentor. So between 2002 and 2013-14, we virtually met 3 or 4 times a week. He was staying in Meena Bagh, so he was for a part of the time he was the chairman of a task force for reforms in agriculture, etc. So every time he made poha or upma or sabudana vada or sabudana khichdi in his house, he would call me, ki aaja. And we used to chat a lot about exactly the kind of discussion we are doing today. I saw the passion of this gentleman about farmers and why the incomes need to be enhanced. So
Sharad Joshi used to tell me that there are only two things which my farmer needs, and this is what I had mentioned at the UI conference also. He said that farmers don't need subsidies, they don't need doles, they don't need grants. They need access to technology and they need access to markets. So these are the two things my farmers need, and with these two, the farmers in India, they are hardworking, they are innovative, they will become prosperous on their own. They don't need any government doles or support. So this is what he taught me. He has literally written hundreds of articles in Hindu Business Line. So they have all been aggregated into various books. So I would encourage you to read that. So when you are coming to today's topic, what TAC is, TAC is also an ecosystem organization or entity which will support startups, which will support the government, and which will enable these people to do their jobs better, like the Agri founder said, and Shobit also mentioned this. So I don't see it directly benefiting the farmer. The farmer will be the indirect beneficiary. Like Indigram Labs Foundation, our work indirectly benefits the farming community. When we support good entrepreneurs, great entrepreneurs, we have a theme called Children of Farmer Entrepreneur Category. So we can acronym it as COFFEE. So we are very proud of that. Out of 64, 20 startups are from that category. And maybe the young startup founders here who have raised enormous amounts of money, and eventually they will create enormous amounts of wealth. So hopefully they can invest part of their wealth into enterprises which are actually coming from villages and make them a part of their supply chain or their own
Meant for the
ecosystem.
farmer, not for yourself, is what he said.
So I'll end with this, and
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Yes, sir, Pradeep, you have something to say. Pradeep is the only person from the satellite imagery, so you must hear it.
And I also am cognizant of the fact that it's already lunchtime. So yes, my name is Pradeep Basu, and I'm founder of a company called SatSure. I'm probably the one person here who's the farthest away from the farmer in this room. So I'll just share a few pointers which are in my world very rooted to realism, and it can come across a bit cynical, but I think we all should be very careful about it. So I know Nipun for more than 2 years now, and it was amazing that with all the energy Nipun started the work, and he has really he's come to the stage with a lot of struggle. I'm aware of it, and just recently we were chatting, and he mentioned that it can be a very lonely journey. I didn't respond to you, but I smile. I'm like, welcome to my world. So the thing is, when we speak of things of stuff that are in abstractions, it's very difficult to convey it and create the necessary checks and balances. I'll now say why I'm highlighting this in the context of what Vicky was saying on the state versus center debate. So in the last 6-7 years, under the garb of digital agriculture, thousands on thousands of crores have flown in. But still, here I am, an entrepreneur who is apparently the market leader in enabling agri-finance, doing only 25,000 reports a month. Okay, why is that? Because number one is there is no real check on the quality of the digital infrastructure we are building. There is no real ranking of it. Center is giving money to state. There is no accountability of that solution, whether it's working for all the stakeholders there, right? Number two is I come from geospatial world, and there is Shrikant sir. I'm having high hopes on him. Sorry sir, putting you on the spot again.
He left before you could say.
Okay, he has gone. So I think it is very clear by now for most of the people that there are several things in which, not all, several things in which geospatial data is extremely important in the farm sector. And yet 7 years have gone and everyone wants to do a POC. Okay, so for once and for all, bloody kill this POC word only. Okay, and I think if in this room we are able to support AgriDx, where you are able to kind of rank order not just states but also different initiatives across the pillars that we have, and make all the stakeholders understand that it is not a person to person dependent interpretation but a very rational interpretation of what is the readiness level of the technologies. I think that would be the biggest enabler of a lot of different services that are enabled through the digital frameworks, which leads to what sir was saying, the increase in income here. So that's about my ask. Thank you.
Thank you so
No,
much.
I think all of you are bringing very great points. Right? One is what Mehta was talking in terms of, like, there are a lot of data that is very informal. If you're going to ask anybody tenant, you're not going to get that data. But the observability data is also missing. Right? For instance, I know this for a fact, and maybe this might have changed, and so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here. We have GST data, but we still don't have the location part of it. We are not able to still today slice and dice in terms of from which areas, what is the GST data that is available. People have made attempts, I know some friends of mine have made attempts to get that data, because you can then get a location dimension of how the GST is actually flowing. But researchers have really banged their heads and we have not been able to do it. So likewise, in India, we see that there is a very thin line between, there is one dimension of formal and informal. A lot of things go informal. And where even simple things like putting your bills and putting a PAN card in, I mean, that's also not there. The second thing is we have also data that is very legible and illegible. So a lot of those aspects are there, and hopefully we will build the building blocks. I'm convinced that, see, you talked about the digital infra blocks. Today I know for a fact that even the fundamental infra blocks are missing. Leave aside digital infra blocks. So we still have a long way. We are almost, I'm sure Shobit would agree, right? We still have the requirements of the pack courses we need in the country vis-a-vis what we have is about 99:1. The amount of pack courses we need in the country, and so we still have a very long way, and the intent here is that we actually slowly do the building job so that at least 2 decades from now we can say that we started the building blocks and we move forward. Yeah,
You want to respond? No, go ahead. I want to also come back to what Chirag raised in the beginning. I want to kind of respond back to that.
Sure. So, my point is, how do we get salience for AgDx? I think that's very critical. So much effort is going on, and much more effort will go on. And I think what's the measure of salience? The measure of salience is when you launch AgDx, can you make sure that instead of us sitting in front rows, the state government sitting and taking it seriously? So what will make states take it seriously? And that's when the ecosystem will also take it seriously. Everyone will fall in line. So there are no clear answers, but what I would suggest is we have to look at partnerships. Which are those influential partners? If they come on board, then the state government will start taking it seriously. For example, we want to co-opt, say, PTIO, we want to co-opt, say, some agriculture universities, independent universities, or you want to co-opt, say, Ministry of Agriculture, the central government, so that it gets its salience and people start taking it seriously. Another example I want to give, I'm sure some of you would have heard of Scotch Awards, right? Some of you would have heard, not all. Now this is run by an independent foundation or independent institution. Now the state government, central government, everyone is making beeline to get that award. Right? So it has created salience. So you talk to anyone in the state government, they take so much pride, you've got this Scotch Award. So maybe some sort of a mechanism to make it more salient, getting the partners who have the capacity to convene and ensure that people take it seriously, and maybe some sort of award. Some sort of award, yes.
मिनिस्टर को बुला लो, उनको अवार्ड दे दो कि आपने डिजिटाइजेशन अच्छा किया है, वो चीजें हो जाएगा शायद आपका काम. You have to develop mechanisms to do.
So that's the only suggestion.
I want to. So, all very good, excellent points. The way and we've been thinking about this for the last 2 years now, in terms of what will make AgDx take off. And ultimately the answer is consumption, right? Consumption by states, consumption by startups, consumption by foundations as they decide where should they invest their money in.
And consumption by farmers.
And by no, but not directly by the farmers, but to benefit the farmers. I mean, the foundations are there to help actions that ultimately support farmers. A lot of the work that the startups are doing are ultimately going to benefit small farmers, but the farmers will not directly be consuming it, and so is the state government. So we came up with a set of principles and a few approaches. I think the only currency that we have is trust. Right? If people trust AgDx at some point in time down the line, then that is the only way it can drive consumption. It doesn't have to be perfect. We can start with 2 parameters, we can start with 4 indicators, but if you trust those parameters and then you keep adding the parameters and indicators as you go forward, that is a very fundamental way of getting consumption going. Number one. Number two, can the government build something like this? The answer is no. Will you have trust in it if the government did it on its own? No. If a startup did it, would you trust it? If a consulting company did it, would you trust it? The answer is no. So the only answer is that if we come together to build it in a framework that remains open, and I strongly believe that that is the most efficient and probably the only way that you can undertake a complex task like this, which actually doesn't benefit one individual, but it benefits all of us, and we can all leverage it. Now, the only way to therefore go forward is to have a set of principles, and we left some open. This is we have to evolve it, right? But the important principle that we said that it should be farmer-centric. We'll start with digital. Is digital the only thing that will affect agriculture? No, the answer is no. But we'll say we'll start our focus on digital. Use public data so that nobody can say that this data was doctored, that you did a research in Bihar on the ground and you came up with your own facts and now you published it, right? So therefore we will use public data and create it as a public good. So I don't own it, you don't own it, it is there as a public good, it is there for all of us to use. Now there will be some other principles we can add on to it, right? That's it. Then we said, what should the approach be? And we said the approach should be things that allow you to take the next step. As Hemendra said, what is the incremental delta that a state can think about as you go forward? What is the action that I want to drive? Now, who can help them with that? Maybe the Mituls and the Chirags and Sureshas and other consulting organizations and foundations who actually work with the state and say, you know, here is what the data is saying, here's what the framework is. If you want to catch up with XYZ state, then these are the 5 actions that you should think about. Second, from an approach standpoint, let it be designed as evolutionary. It will keep evolving. I think I loved what Anish said, drop things that are not working or which are not needed anymore, so that it doesn't become unwieldy. Stay focused on what is the most important parameters and indices that are needed at that point in time. So I think we must also think about ways of adding parameters, but also ways of deleting a parameter. Third, transparency in design methodology. A framework, a nice pretty looking chart tells you that X state is at the top and X state is at the bottom. You start thinking, what is the design, where's the methodology? So let's publish it, let's make sure that there's transparency in it. Right? And it's an open ecosystem. We are encouraging people to come in. I'm not, there's no gatekeepers here, but we should all come in with a set of principles that we align to. We don't want somebody to come and hijack the agenda. So the people joining the ecosystem should come in with a fairly transparent understanding of what is it that we are trying to do. And then finally, let's see if we can make AgDx self-sustaining and equidistant. A couple of people called up Sanjeev and myself over the last few days and said, we love the fact that this is not being driven by a institution, whichever the institution that is, right? That this is something that is being created consciously by design as an open public good by the ecosystem for the ecosystem, right? So therefore we have to think about, but it takes money. Let's not crib up. Right now Sanjeev and I are funding it through personal doses of money, but it does take money. So how do we keep it self-sustaining, but also keep it equidistant at the same point in time? These are some thoughts that I want to leave you all with, but would love to, first of all, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all the feedback, questions, comments. We've recorded things and we'll keep it private. So this is a private meeting, we're not publishing anything like that. But we will publish a summary that we will share with all of you, right? So thank you for that. Please do write in if you want to express support or you want to contribute or join the effort in some manner. Whichever manner it is. I mean, there are so many different specialities that would be needed as you grow. AgDx, not not only researchers, not only domain knowledge, but also people on governance, people on raising money, people on bringing it forward, etc. Right?
Many people have earned their lunch.
And they've earned their lunch now. And Sanjeev has been designated as the CEO of AgDx going forward, right? So, all right, with that, thank you so much. Last words.
No last words. Thank you so much, folks. Thanks for being patient and listening in. So this is a long journey, and I'm looking forward to a lot of support from all of you. If nothing else, just a good word is good enough, or a kick in the backside to say you're going the wrong way. I'm okay with that also. Thank you so much. God bless you. Lunch is outside.
Thank you. Can we have a quick photograph? Can we just get together at the back, or just stand where we are? Okay.
नहीं आगे वाले लोग बैठे रहिए प्लीज आगे वाले लोग बैठे रहिए आप बैठे पीछे वाले
थोड़ा सा पीछे वाले थोड़ा सा क्लोज हो जाए
नहीं आप पीछे चले जाते हैं शीन आप आगे चले बेटा फिर हैंडल हो गया
हाँ मेरे पास कार्ड है उनका बट उस टाइम पे इतनी ज़्यादा बात हो नहीं पाएंगे
ये गुड नहीं आई
मगर ये जो कम से कम जो से कम
लाइन में जब श्री लास्ट में देखने जी हाँ शीन मतलब है सब कुछ हाँ कम in any case you could thank your night your own मैं भी ले लूँ उतनी हाँ तुम आ जाओ जल्दी से बेटा you also come हाँ इकोसिस्टम बिल्ड करती है Thank you. Thank you.
एक सेकंड one more. Just sorry, one more. Sorry, one more picture. We can just all pose.
एक मिनट बैठ जा मैं तो अब 2-3 ले लो नहीं हो गया